That day, magical gates suddenly appeared in the air, portals leading to dungeons. Behind each gate was a completely different world filled with countless terrifying monsters of all shapes and sizes. And the monsters inside poured out en masse. The only ones who could stop them were those who had awakened magical powers. They used their awakened abilities to fight together and defeat the illegally invading monsters. In that fierce battle, amid melee beasts and flying monsters everywhere, heroes from one squad fought side by side, searching for gold. Ingolf von Dietz, searching for gold, Claudia Bordeaux. Each of them had different powers. One could control fire, searching for gold, Nathaniel Koval. One could control wind to fight the flying monsters, searching for gold, Iwako Hideki. There was also a girl of unknown identity with a cold face who fought heroically with a thunder spear, searching for gold. After an intense fight, the five stood on the same front when a monster suddenly leapt to attack an ordinary, non-magical civilian. That person fell to the ground screaming in panic. Dietz looked at Bordeaux and told her to go help the civilian. Hey, go help those in trouble. But Bordeaux lazily propped her hand on her cheek and said indifferently, but there are too many. While the others were still shirking responsibility, the greenish monster raised its claws toward the civilian who was kneeling face down on the ground, clutching their head and trembling. Just as the monster seemed about to crush them, a foot came from nowhere and stomped straight into its face with a devastating blow, denting one side of the creature's face. The struck monster flew back and slammed into a wall with a thud, creating an explosion. A tall man wearing a suit and a long cloak tilted his head slightly to look at the man kneeling on the ground and smiled, asking, "Is everyone all right?" He confidently told his teammates, "I'll handle this," searching for gold, Misato Kyoichiro. With a snap, Kyoichiro leapt up from the ground. He focused his power into his right hand and aimed straight at the crowded horde of monsters below. Kyoichiro's eyes flashed with a cold light. He used a flurry of strikes to hit weak points and killed all the monsters before him with a single blow. His teammate Hideki watched in amazement and exclaimed, "He's incredible, facing so many monsters alone," while Koval stood silently behind, observing without comment. The woman in the tight red outfit looked toward the gate without much surprise. With magic of the time attribute, he can see the future and thus knows what the monsters will do next. They all drew the same conclusion at once when they saw Kyoichiro rushing to slay a dragon-like, fire-breathing monster with a confident smile. He was no longer merely human. The battle paused temporarily after the monsters that came out of the gates were all wiped out, their bodies strewn across the city's rubble. Kyoichiro, leading the treasure-seeking group, stood before a snake-like giant monster right at the gate and told his teammates behind him, "All right." He swung decisively and beheaded the monster in one strike. "This is the last one, then." Kyoichiro was confident, "With this power, I can protect everyone's peace." He placed his hand on the gate that opened into the dungeon entrance and said, "Now, I will seal the gate." But as soon as he finished speaking, some force knocked him through the gate. Kyoichiro stared, wide-eyed. He knelt and put one hand on the ground to brace himself against the force but still slid a long distance. When he looked up, he saw that the other side of the gate had been sealed, and his trusted teammates were on the other side. Kyoichiro frowned, not understanding what was happening. "What is this?" "That is." A look of astonishment appeared in his eyes. "I've never seen a future like this." Kyoichiro stepped up to the sealed exit and looked at his teammates. "Were you all in on this? Why would you do this?" Koval laughed with glee. "Why, you ask?" Now he and the others no longer hid their greedy, cruel smiles. He shoved his hands in his pockets, standing among the five with a contemptuous grin. "It's because you didn't know that you were vulnerable to betrayal." Kyoichiro forced himself calm and asked again, "What?" The woman in the tight red outfit glanced at him arrogantly. "You're a level 100 monster who can use time attribute magic." Bordeaux curled her lip and added, "We just want to make money safely." Dietz ground his teeth in anger, "And yet you kept insisting on helping people." Hideki pointed at him reproachfully, saying, "You put us in this dangerous situation." And Koval smirked triumphantly to conclude, "But today will be the last time." He raised his hand in a mocking farewell to Kyoichiro's former comrades, then turned his back and walked away happily. "We'll see you again." On this side of the gate, Kyoichiro kept pounding the barrier, watching the backs of the traitors. He still harbored a faint hope. "Are you serious? Let me out of here." Kyoichiro painfully wondered, would they betray me for reasons like these? He recalled the days they fought side by side, how harmonious the six of them had been. As leader of the treasure-seeking group, I only did my best to protect the world from monsters and to protect everyone. I was always the one charging into the front line to fight. Kyoichiro gritted his teeth and kept punching the seal. his eyes flashed with rage. Why? Before he could find an answer, the horde of monsters behind him surged forward like starving tigers. Kyoichiro spun around and with one strike killed one of them. But then he realized with shock. Behind him were countless monsters, swarming like flies. He used his power, his eyes lit up as he looked into the future. Can I escape from here? My future is. The future he saw was a scene that broke him completely, death, dying under the fangs and claws of those monsters. Kyoichiro laughed. It no longer exists, does it? Alone, he faced a swarm of monsters that lunged crazily to reach him. He gritted his teeth and channeled all his fury into his fists. Kyoichiro leapt into the air to strike down at the mass of monsters, but they surged on like ants, wave after wave. After a prolonged fight, Kyoichiro, covered in wounds, collapsed to the ground. He bowed his head and let his arms fall, blood streaming from his injuries until it pooled into a large puddle. He couldn't change the future. He lifted his head, his gaze was icy. Perhaps there was no other choice. Kyoichiro watched the monsters still surging toward him. Other than accepting death, what else was there? They swarmed over his battered body, tearing him apart, fresh blood splattering everywhere. But Kyoichiro kept resisting. He kicked the nearest monster into the air, though countless others still surrounded him. I won't die in vain like this. Kyoichiro's hand still tried to use his magic to grab the monster's head. I'll be reborn and become stronger, he thought madly as he continued fighting. Then he'll reach the peak of power and take revenge. This rage, I will engrave it in my heart. Kyoichiro swung his fist into the air. Until the day I can avenge and wash away my regrets. A powerful energy surrounded Kyoichiro's body and surged straight up from his palms, temporarily blasting the surrounding monsters away. Kyoichiro's whole body seemed to be in agony, blood pouring from every orifice. The light persisted, then condensed into a blinding glow. Scene shifts to another place. Someone abruptly opened their eyes. They wore a patient gown, sat up, slipped on slippers, and tried to stand. He looked at himself in the mirror. A slightly pale teenager was reflected in the glass. He touched it, a mix of quiet joy and coldness in his eyes, and said this rebirth seems to have succeeded. The patient in the gown was the body Kyoichiro had reincarnated into. Only then did he assess his surroundings. Is this a hospital? Those machines look odd. How many years have passed? If 100 years have gone by, then I won't be able to take revenge on them anymore, he thought with hatred as he remembered the smiling faces that had betrayed him. Kyoichiro noticed something. This is. He picked up the student ID of this body. Student number 120-0002, name Ase Kayasuk, attribute, void. The card confirmed that about 20 years had passed since then. His eyes suddenly lit with astonishment. Kyoichiro read the attribute line of the former owner of the body. This was, void attribute. He immediately broke into a smug smile, heh. That smile then twisted into inhumanness. Kyoichiro laughed like a madman. He recalled that in his previous life his teammates had feared him because he was the strongest thanks to the time attribute, but as time went on he realized he could not grow any stronger. Even seeing the future couldn't perceive the true depth of the void attribute's power. He couldn't use his own ability to gauge the strength of someone with the void attribute. Kyoichiro looked down at the hands of this new body. Poor kid. Undoubtedly, the void attribute was the strongest, like an indefinite, unordered void. And in his previous life no one had possessed it. Because it was so rare, no one knew how to train it. He looked at the card again. No wonder this boy remained at level 1. Kyoichiro looked at the naive student photo on the card and thought the boy had probably been mocked as having no attribute more than once. He placed the card over his heart and said, "Don't worry, kid, I will make your name renowned across the world as the strongest explorer. Thanks to foresight, I know how to train the void attribute. You can rely on my past life's power to see energy flows and learn to cultivate them into fruitful strength." He activated the strength of this body. A powerful light enveloped him and lit up the room. With this power, I will become absolute. I will make those traitors. He clenched his fist, smiling maniacally, regret betraying and driving me to death. He recalled Kaval's smiling face at that moment. And the former comrades who had once been close to him, grinning with glee as they betrayed the one who always trusted them. To take revenge on them, I must level up first. From this moment on, the Kyoichiro of the previous life will die. You will be Kayasu. He lay back down on the bed and closed his eyes. The entire space was pitch black. The void attribute, true to its name, related to conditional magic, void. Its essence lay in the ability to freely turn imagination into reality. He shut his eyes tight and concentrated. Magical energy began to stir. Imagining is something anyone can do, like an art student picturing the shape they want to draw, but when transferring it to paper stroke by stroke it never matches the perfection of the imagination. Making it real is the hard part. Fortunately this body was gravely injured. Kayasuk's body was still wrapped in white bandages around the abdomen. If I impose the image in my head onto this body, he frowned and concentrated, trying to visualize it. The magical energy he tried to focus flowed in streams with a shimmering, mystical light, imagining each cell being healed by magic as it traveled to every cell in Kayasuk's body, using his power to mend those injuries. The wound on his arm was gradually enveloped by that beautiful golden light. The energy sparkled like a band of galaxies. Kayasuk's arm wounds were quickly healed. The magical energy gradually dissipated. He sat up excitedly and looked down at the arm that had just been wounded, now whole with no trace left. Yes, success. Kayasuk pressed his thumb against the skin of his right wrist. Since it was only rudimentary magic, the recovery speed wasn't high and the inside of his body wasn't fully healed yet. He thought that if he used it repeatedly the level would rise. By repeating the visualization to heal wounds he would recover completely soon. The ability to turn imagination into reality would also improve. The void attribute's magical energy was vast, it comprised many different elements converging, and could expand the range of what could be made real. Thanks to that, many types of magic could be created and used. He alone could master all elements from wind, earth, and fire to lightning, and eventually the images in his mind could be realized exactly in the world. Mirrored shields would no longer hinder him, they would shatter to give the void attribute space to expand, it would grow vast like the universe. Kayasuk smiled. At that moment a middle-aged doctor holding his chart stood at the door in surprise. "You're awake, finally." Kayasuk turned to look at him. The doctor hurried over to examine him. "Don't move too quickly, you were seriously injured after the monster attack." He pushed the blanket aside and sat up on the hospital bed. "So that's what happened to this kid." The doctor smiled brightly. "Despite being in critical condition, you woke up as if the Saintess had granted a miracle." Kayasuk looked up curiously and asked, "What did you say, Saintess? What do you mean?" The doctor was surprised. You don't know." He honestly shook his head. The doctor's face flushed with reverence as he thought of the Saintess of the 5 holy stars. Kayasuk's expression went blank. "I don't know either. What are the 5 holy stars?" He adjusted his glasses and frowned as he rechecked the chart. "Right, you just awoke. Confusion is understandable." He gave some instructions and left the room. "Never mind, I'll run a full check now. I'm going to prepare the instruments, stay seated here." After the doctor left, Kayasuk pulled back the blanket and sat up. "Saintess, 5 holy stars, are they some clan or adventure group that rose in the past 20 years? He went to the TV remote on the table. Leveling up was mandatory. But he also needed to grasp the current situation. He picked up the remote and pressed power. The TV sounded on. A special report today about the dungeon disaster level 555 20 years ago. The broadcast showed images of that time when monsters flooded the streets. Great, a special about the event where I was betrayed. Kayasuk focused on the news. The culprit was. The screen displayed an image of himself from his previous life, the leader of the treasure-seeking group, a time attribute user, level 100, named Misato Kyoichiro. Kayasuk jolted in shock. What? He couldn't believe it, staring at the screen. Am I the culprit? What the hell is going on? The screen replayed scenes of monsters pouring out of the gate and ravaging the city in smoke and flames. He had foreseen the disaster but told no one, planning to exploit the chaos to dominate the world. The remaining members of the treasure-seeking group stopped that from happening. They were the great heroes called the 5 holy stars. The TV showed his 5 former teammates. After a fierce battle Misato Kyoichiro was defeated and the dungeon was successfully sealed. The report's voice echoed. It was a miracle known to all. Even now, the 5 holy stars still lead the world in many fields. Kayasuk froze before the TV. Today, we will invite experts to. He abruptly switched off the TV. Kayasuk's bowed reflection appeared on the screen. He covered his mouth and laughed, the laughter growing more and more maniacal. He sank into rage. Not only had they betrayed him, they had defiled his honor. They had sacrificed themselves. Visions of his bloodied face flashed in his mind. Meanwhile they were hailed and welcomed like celebrities, like true heroes, shamelessly taking the glory and being praised by the whole world. The remote in Kayasuk's hand trembled with anger. I won't forgive them, never. He gritted his teeth. His eyes filled with hatred. All of them, I will send every last one of them to hell. The hospital room grew silent. He calmed himself and exhaled. Kayasuk turned toward the bedside cabinet. He had to be careful, he couldn't fall into their sight. He placed the TV remote on the cabinet. Then he reached for his phone. Right. The teenager looked at the phone screen. The school this boy attended was. He smiled with interest. The phone lit up, just as he thought, the principal of the Takigo Adventure Training Academy, 5 Holy Stars, Iwako Hideki. Kayasuk gripped the phone, just waking up and already knowing where this was, lucky. He sat back on the bed, chin in hand, pondering. But Iwako is very cautious, he's not someone who easily shows flaws. His gaze flicked to the ID card placed on the bedside. The student card showed his identity and current level. The level gap is too large now, I can't defeat him. Kayasuk collapsed back onto the bed. He spread his hand and stared at it intently. I can't do anything at level 1. Now I'll work to level up and find him. He clenched his fist, eyes resolute. Just wait, you're my first target, Iwako. A few weeks later, sunlight streamed dazzlingly into the room. Kayasuk stood before the mirror and stretched to warm up his body. Great, now I can move without issues. He put on his jacket as the doctor behind him couldn't believe it. No, impossible, he had fully recovered in just weeks. The doctor happily thought of his idol. Could this really be a blessing from the saintess? Kayasuk tightened his tie, turning his back to the doctor. No, doctor. His face went cold. Everything is thanks to my own power. Kayasuk left coldly, stepped out the door and raised his hand. All right, thanks for taking care of me. The doctor watched him go and replied, sure, take care of yourself too. He was discharged and stood under the clear blue sky. Now, I'm done with the basics. He put the ID card into his trouser pocket, his current level was sufficient. Let's warm up a bit and then head into a dungeon, he said with a confident smile. Sounds good. Kayasuk recalled the conversation with the doctor at the hospital. The doctor sighed as he recounted the current situation of this body. I heard him. Apparently Kayasuk's entire family died in an accident. He slipped his hands into his jacket pockets and walked alone along the main road. He spoke to the former owner of this body. I do feel sorry for Kayasuk back then. Then he closed his eyes and thought, but for me it's a good thing, because it means I can do whatever I want. Kayasuk took a step forward. Across the street ahead was a gate. Curiously he pulled out his phone and checked the map. This is the place. After assessing everything for a while, Kayasuk pulled up his hood and face scarf, his eyes resolute. If I want to level up and get stronger, I want to try my luck here. He went to the security guard, took out a card, and placed it on the desk. The man immediately grabbed his wrist to hold him back and shouted, Hey, you there. Kayasuk jerked his hand back and gave the guard a cold look. What is it? The guard, flustered under his stare, began to tense up. He had seen the information on Kayasuk's card. You're only level 27. This area requires adventurers to be at least level 30 to form a party and enter. And you were planning to go in alone. That's practically suicide. The guard, worried for his safety, grabbed Kayasuk's wrist again to advise him, but Kayasuk remained calm and said, I suppose that's true for ordinary cases. But our main character shrugged off the helpful guard's hand, holding his card up for the guard to see clearly. I'm a student of Takigo Adventure Training Academy. If I just sign the consent form, it will be fine, right? Kayasuk had prepared before coming. He stood looking at the guard. I already researched this while I was in the hospital, he said. The guard hesitated awkwardly. Well, yes, but, while the two of them were still arguing with no resolution, a voice rang out behind Kayasuk that made him open his eyes wide. Come on now. He turned to look. By the tree across the road 3 people were watching him. The one leaning against the tree spoke. That's enough. The orange-haired guy grinned and said, they're only saying that because they care about you. Another mocked him with a sneer, aren't you just a newbie? You'd better know your place. Kayasuk glanced at them and didn't reply. He turned back to continue talking with the guard watching the gate, pointing at the tablet screen on the guard's desk. I just need to sign here, right? Without waiting for his answer, Kayasuk picked up the pen and decisively signed his name under the words I agree displayed on the screen. The guard still tried to stop him. Wait, but Kayasuk didn't care. After signing, he tossed the pen on the desk and left coldly, leaving the worried security staff behind. Now there should be no more problems. He walked alone toward the gate, waving to the guard who still wanted to stop him. Anyway, thanks for your concern. Thanks. Seeing him walk off, the guard quickly pointed at the 3 people gathered under the tree. Hey, you guys, sorry, but please keep an eye on that kid. The guard really was kind, he told the 3, letting him go alone is like sending him to his death. The shortest guy with the center-parted hair curled his lips in irritation and said, huh. He stepped forward, acting tough. Why should we do that for that brat? But before he finished, the purple-haired guy with glasses, who hadn't spoken, laughed and patted his teammate's shoulder. Actually, this could be fun. The glasses-wearing guy said, if no one's watching, then. The other 2 stared at him in surprise. He wore a sly expression, his eyes malicious as he looked at the other 2. Whatever happens, it won't matter, right? The 3 of them picked up the vibe and grinned sneeringly as they sprinted toward the gate. A brat acting tough. He still has 100 years of training to go. The kind guard, unaware he'd asked the wrong people, cheerfully waved at them in thanks. Sorry for the trouble, I'm counting on you. The 3 entered the gate after Kayasuk. Beyond the gate was a long tunnel lit by torches on both sides, but down that endless path they couldn't see the protagonist's figure anywhere. The glasses guy said with delight, sure, just the usual. The orange-haired one laughed and added, kill the brat, then blame the monsters. The 3 remembered the person they'd killed in the dungeon before. The young man's body was covered in wounds and blood splattered the walls and floor, while they stood there with hands in their pockets admiring what they'd done. Thanks to those idiots. And our coin purses kept getting fuller. They killed lone people who entered the dungeon past the gate and looted everything from cash to jewels. The 3, imagining that profitable, murderous prospect, eagerly dashed deeper inside. 10 minutes later, they were still sprinting. The glasses wearer, already tired, asked the orange-haired one, it's been straight all the way, right? The orange-haired guy, also gasping, replied, yet we still haven't caught up to that kid. Suddenly they stopped. The orange-haired guy pointed ahead as if he'd spotted something. Look. Ahead of them, Kayasuk was facing a swarm of monsters in the dungeon, finally caught up. Energy radiated from him. Kayasuk's gaze was ice-cold. He swept his hand once, and a fierce flame burst forth straight ahead. Kayasuk raised his hand to head level, conjuring magic like a whirlwind as his right hand spun continuously. Then he thrust it forward. The vortex and the fire surged ahead powerfully. Kayasuk's fire was so strong that when it swept through the monsters, they were incinerated before they could flee. In moments, the once massive horde was reduced to ash and the tunnel was clear again. The 3 who had followed Kayasuk stood behind, astonished. The glasses wearer gaped. No way. The short one couldn't believe his eyes. It alone defeated an S-rank monster. The corner of the orange-haired guy's stiff mouth curled up as he pointed at Kayasuk. More importantly, wasn't that a rare drop? What glittered before them was a bag overflowing with gem-like items, with more jewels scattered across the ground around it. The 3 bastards' eyes lit up at the sight of the loot bag. They couldn't shut their mouths. If we sold that, we could live the good life for 6 months. Noticing Kayasuk had been quietly picking up the gems without reacting to their presence, they began plotting. He still hasn't noticed. Idiot, that rare drop is ours. Just kill him, they said, easy. The 3 quickly set their dirty plan in motion as one leapt up. The orange-haired guy had latched onto the tunnel ceiling. The glasses wearer looked up at his comrade's position and smiled. The short one had also taken his place. The glasses wearer turned and nodded to confirm once more. The 3 thieves simultaneously unleashed their magic toward Kayasuk. Now, kill him. Our protagonist pulled his mask down and swore, damn it. He used magic, turned with fury, and snarled at the cowards. You think doing that makes you clever? Kayasuk used his ability to smoothly dodge their water and wind attacks, no matter the era. He sliced through the wind blade and the water column of the 2 with no effort at all. There are always scum trying to steal others' things, huh? The orange-haired guy and the center-parted one dropped down in shock at Kayasuk. What? He dodged the attack. Impossible. Does he have eyes in the back of his head? The glasses wearer couldn't believe it. He conjured a fireball with a showy flourish and leapt behind the main. Just beginner's luck. Die. Kayasuk didn't dodge. He turned and channeled power into his fist. A straight punch to the glasses wearer's stomach made the fireball in his hand vanish completely. He immediately spat blood. The blow was so powerful it sent him flying, and the large body slammed hard against the tunnel wall. Dust cleared. A section of the tunnel had been crushed. The glasses wearer lay sprawled against the dungeon wall while Kayasuk calmly continued his hunt. He spoke to the man who had been knocked out. With vermin like you, I'll crush you without mercy. The 2 accomplices froze in panic, not daring to make a sound. Kayasuk stamped the ground. I won't hesitate to use you as stepping stones. He was like the Reaper incarnate, eyes full of hatred as he stared at them. The grudge I carry officially begins now. Outside the gate, the sky remained clear and peaceful. At that moment, another person entered the dungeon. A handsome man in a cloak stood with arms crossed, head held high, Iwako's subordinate, Yoichi Tsudai. I came after hearing that an academy student had entered the dungeon alone. He looked at the 3 bodies on the ground. Why were there newly dead adventurers here? Iwako stared at the scene and wondered what on earth had happened. Cut back to the outside world. Night had fallen, and an apartment building still had its lights on. Kayasuke sat in his room looking at the ID card in his hand. On a D-rank dungeon, I could have leveled up and tested void magic. He studied the information on the card carefully. His new magic was information concealment. Kayasuke grinned maliciously. He could fake his level and even erase dungeon entry data. Pretty useful. He lay on the bed and checked the news on his phone. So tomorrow's my first day at the academy, huh? A notification popped up on the phone screen from the previous day. Pay up, hurry, wake up you attributeless idiot. He frowned and realized something. So that's it. The next morning, students were on their way to school. Kayasuke slung his bag and headed to class when someone called his name, Kayasuke. He turned to look. An energetic, lively, cute girl waved at him. His classmate, Asahi Karen. Good morning, feeling better now? Kayasuke replied politely, thanks, I'm fine now. She looked very worried for him and sighed in relief when he said he was okay. I'm so glad, I was really worried. Kayasuke glanced at his friend indulgently, so he did have someone who cared. A voice cut into their conversation, look who it is. Kayasuke tilted his head, the speaker continued mockingly, isn't that the attributeless guy who barely survived? Kayasuke looked over to see 3 guys with green and red hair approaching with sneers. Since you had to protect a weak level 1 like him, you owe me something. The leader boasted, you must have brought it with you, right? I'm a bit short on cash right now. Hearing that, he immediately remembered last night's message, so it was those bastards. Karen stepped in front of Kayasuke. She seemed a little scared but bravely defended him. Stop right there, Kayasuke just got out of the hospital. Her action surprised him. He noticed her hand gripping the bag strap trembling continuously. Kayasuke looked at Karen. He stepped forward to stand between her and them. Thanks, but I'm fine. The 2 lackeys behind them doubled over laughing like it was the funniest thing, clutching their stomachs. Damn, listen to this attributeless shrimp talk. Don't act tough just because you're standing in front of a girl. The leader cracked his knuckles, sneering, let me remind you, you're useless, you can't even cast magic. You're the ones who need to be reminded of your place, Kayasuke retorted bluntly. The 3 immediately stopped laughing, as if they couldn't understand how he could say that, huh? Our protagonist stood before the bastards who'd bullied him and said with conviction, unlike you scum, rest easy, kid, I'll make your name renowned across the world as the strongest adventurer. He raised his hand, I'm the one who keeps promises. Kayasuke's gesture made the leader lose his temper. He conjured a fireball above his head, furious and losing control as he shouted at the main, what nonsense are you spouting? Karen, worried, warned him, no way, you can't use magic outside the dungeon, it's against school rules. But the guy ignored her and barked, shut up, this attributeless trash is the one who's wrong for daring to defy me. He hurled the fireball at Kayasuke, take this. Kayasuke stood there unflinching. Kayasuke frowned. His right hand also summoned fire magic. With a flick, his fireball shot forward. Kayasuke's fireball was 3 times larger than the others. The 2 fireballs were about to collide. There was an explosion as the 2 fireballs collided, scattering countless embers between them. The 2 lackeys gaped in panic. No way, isn't that the same kind of magic? Since when could he use that? The leader was also stunned, unable to trust his eyes. What the? Kayasuke glared at the bastard coldly. Is that it? His words were an insult to the bully. He ground his teeth and hissed each word, you piece of shit. The leader immediately turned to call for backup. Hey you lot, stop standing there, take care of him. The 2 lackeys obeyed and unleashed their magic toward the main. Yeah, try this. Still wind and water, like those defeated robbers in the dungeon. Our main didn't even bother to drop his bag. He raised his hand and used both water and wind magic at once. With a single flick of his hand, his spell met the 2 attackers head-on. The 3 bullies were truly terrified now. What the hell is this? How many types of magic can he use? I've never heard of anything like this. Before they could stop panicking, Kayasuke asked one short question that froze all 3 in place. Satisfied? Kayasuke snapped his fingers. now it's my turn. A massive aura surged up behind him, rolling like a storm. Kayasuk advanced step by step with clenched fists. Don't worry, I won't kill you. Well, not yet. The three bullies panicked and turned to run for their lives. Holy shit, the main's voice was like a demon from hell. Kayasuk, you begged us for help, didn't you? He grabbed the leader by the shoulder. So what did you lot do back then? His eyes now showed no emotion, cold and detached like a killing machine. Enough, I don't need your answer. He clamped his hand over the leader's mouth, making him sweat with fear. You vermin! The leader grabbed Kayasuk's arm with both hands but couldn't resist that overwhelming strength. Kayasuk coldly judged him. You always say the same things. He was scared to the point of tears, and so, no matter what you say, I won't stop this punch until it lands. With eyes full of hatred, the main stared straight at the bully. His fist was the convergence of countless types of power. Without hesitation he struck the leader in the face. The man immediately sprayed blood from his nose and passed out. His whole body flew like a rocket before finally stopping. The leader lay sprawled on the main road, smoking, motionless. Karen covered her mouth with both hands in fear. Ase Kayasuk. The two lackeys panicked and helped the unconscious leader up. No one would dare look down on you anymore, from now on. Kayasuk smiled wickedly. Let's walk together on the path to become the strongest adventurer. Apologies echoed across the school. We're sorry. The two lackeys supported the leader who could no longer walk on his own. We're sorry, okay. After they got some distance from our main, the leader ground his teeth and cursed under his breath. Damn, after leaving the hospital he changed completely. Kayasuk closed his eyes and said softly, in the end he's nothing special. Karen stuck her head out, bewildered, and didn't reply. They walked side by side down the hallway. Their classmates all looked at them with unfriendly expressions. Everyone glanced awkwardly, then turned and whispered among themselves. Kayasuk noticed his classmate's strange attitude. Was he drawing too much attention? As the protagonist and his classmate were about to enter the classroom, someone grabbed a student's shoulder from behind and said, "Wait a moment." The person asked, "You are Ase Kayasuk, right?" Kayasuk glanced back at the speaker. A handsome man with a cold expression tilted his head and politely asked, "Do you have a moment?" Kayasuk wondered who he was. His eyes narrowed in suspicion. He looked noble. What a headache, should I ignore him? After thinking it over, Kayasuk raised a hand and awkwardly smiled as he declined. Sorry, class is about to start. The man cut him off before he finished. Wait, I haven't told you my name yet. He stood erect in the hallway. I'm Yoichi Tsudai, leader of the Cat Gnawers. Karen halted in surprise and looked at him. Cat Gnawers? Kayasuk's expression went ice cold. The society formed by Principal Iwako. Huh. Kayasuk's hand on the door froze. Tsudai continued, I'll ask again, Ase. He smiled darkly. Could you spare me a moment of your time? Kayasuk was silent. Then he turned and smiled. If that's the case, it seems there's no other choice. Cut to an empty classroom. Tsudai looked at him seriously and asked straight away, were you the one who defeated the adventurers discovered in the D-rank dungeon last night? Kayasuk acted nonchalant as if it had nothing to do with him. What are you talking about? But inwardly he kept wondering, such information should have been kept secret. How did he know? Kayasuk's face was cold as he stared at the other. Tsudai pressed on, I was told a student entered the dungeon, so I came to investigate. While in the dungeon, I discovered a notorious gang that hunted rookies, but when he found them they were nothing but corpses strewn on the ground. And moreover, Tsudai grimly recounted what he saw when you used magic. This morning you even used multi-attribute magic, right? Kayasuk inwardly smirked, meaning he doesn't know the specifics of my magic. He waved his hand and grew harsher. Now tell me the truth. Were you the one who took them down? Kayasuk rummaged through his pockets. Because I was ambushed this morning, I really don't remember clearly what happened. He pulled his ID card from his jacket pocket and laughed helplessly. I'm only rank 1, how could I have done that? Tsudai looked surprised at the card Kayasuk produced. The card's information was clear, the student card did show rank 1, and the attribute listed was void. He looked at Kayasuk's harmless smile and sneered inwardly, just some nobody, and he dares waste my time. Tsudai clenched his teeth in anger. Then he turned, pushed the door open, and left. Before exiting the classroom he added perfunctorily, sorry for calling you in. He stood in the doorway and looked back. Don't do anything suspicious, extra trouble is annoying. Kayasuk stood in the hallway watching Tsudai's retreating back. He thought to himself, that Tsudai guy. It seems I can use him. Thinking that, Kayasuk smiled slyly. He could approach Iwako without raising suspicion, Is there a way to make him my pawn? Kayasuke wondered as he dealt with the gullible Tsudai. Wait, now's the perfect time to test that magic, Kayasuke smirked calculatingly. Cut to an office. Tsudai stood at attention reporting his findings to a man seated with his back to the bookshelf. My report on last night's events in the D-rank dungeon ends here. The other man sat with one leg crossed and his chin propped on his hand. You messed up too. Hideki, hair slicked back and hands ringed in glittering jewelry, frowned reprovingly. I told you to be careful who you use. Takigo Adventure Training Academy, 5 Saints Insignia, Principal Iwako Hideki. Tsudai bowed deeply. I sincerely apologize. I will try to calm the situation immediately. Hideki rose. Of course. He stepped in front of the bowed Tsudai. If your involvement in the rookie hunting incident is exposed, I will be criticized as well. Hideki grabbed Tsudai's face and pulled it up so he faced him. His face like a demon scared Tsudai. Don't forget that. If anything goes wrong, even you will be fired immediately. Tsudai bowed his head very low and shouted, I understand, Principal Iwako. In a corner out of Hideki's sight, Tsudai gritted his teeth and cursed under his breath. Damn it, why do I have to deal with this pile of trash? If I'd known it would end up like this, I would have squeezed more hush money out of those bastards. Turns out he wasn't so clean either. He took bribes from the bandits Kayasuke encountered. He clenched his teeth and forced down his anger at being reprimanded. Hideki turned back to his desk. Nonetheless, there was one thing I still don't understand. Tsudai looked up and asked curiously, what is it, sir? He picked up his tablet. According to your report, the student in question should be at least a third year. But there were no third-year students who entered the dungeon last night. The tablet clearly showed that. Hideki put the tablet back on its stand and said, well then, maybe they were killed by monsters while hunting rookies, and you're lying to cover it up, he said, folding his hands behind his back as he passed Tsudai, asserting something that made him ashen. He moved to the window, hands clasped behind his back, staring out at the clear blue sky. Rather than believe one of my students could single-handedly defeat rookie hunters, this is the more realistic conclusion. Tsudai seemed to realize, I see, is that it? Hideki didn't turn around. Yes. Unless something extremely unusual happened. He widened his eyes at that. Well, Tsudai recalled the oddity Hideki mentioned. Oddity. It seemed the odd thing was Kayasuke's student card listing a void attribute at rank 1. He quickly spoke up, Principal Iwako, could a special attribute be connected to this? Hideki put a hand to his chin and tilted his head in thought, a special attribute, that's a possibility. Hearing that, he seemed to realize something interesting and smirked. Tsudai, grinning confidently, placed a hand on his chest. Principal Iwako, please let me handle this case. His attention returned once more to our protagonist Kayasuke. I'll be quick. Tsudai sneered with malicious eyes and vowed to resolve the matter completely. On the wall a torch blazed, casting red-hot embers. A few boys in matching outfits were unleashing powerful streams of energy in the same direction. Seeing the monkey going berserk ahead, one of them shouted urgently, I see it running that way. Suddenly the monkey grew gigantic and let out a terrifying roar, its blood-red eyes seeming to devour everything around it. At that moment someone concentrated a surge of power in their palm, forming a vortex-like circle. The energy shot directly into the rampaging monkey, making it howl in agony. The students watched terrified as the monkey began to fall, cold sweat breaking out. Tsudai was the one who just defeated the monkey. He called out loudly to the others, students, do not break formation. The trainees who'd seen the display wore expressions of admiration and exclaimed in unison, Yoichi is amazing, after all, he was chosen by Principal Iwako. Maybe I should join the cat knowers too. Tsudai stared at the piled-up monsters and said softly, all right, I've cleared all the monsters in this area. Those behind him chorused, well done, Yoichi. He turned his back and left, instructing them, I leave the rest to you. Those students replied, understood. Then, it's time to do why I came here, Tsudai told himself, slipping a hand into his coat to retrieve something. Tsudai pulled out a small chain with a strange surface and gently placed it in his palm. Reveal Ase Kayasuke's location to me, he said, then flung the chain forward, imbuing it with a weird blue energy. The chain began to stretch rapidly. The hand holding the chain's end began to feel a force pulling it along. He thought to himself, just as I suspected, he's far from the other students. Receiving the signal from the chain, Tsudai quickened his pace and followed the direction it pointed. I don't know what he's planning, but that works in my favor. Tsudai began to imagine, his thoughts growing strange. If so, no one would suspect his death was anything but a tragic accident. I only happened to look for Master Ase. These sorts of things happen all the time in dungeons, he thought, grinning slyly. As if remembering something, he thought, first, the trainee hunter incident. Then the chain of troubles since the moment he was discharged from the hospital. He recalled the scene he'd seen from above. Also, I'm really curious about what they said. Sudai remembered the time in the classroom. At that point he had asked wearily, is it true? A group of youths were kneeling before him, some with bandaged faces. A red-haired one hurriedly told him, it's true, believe me, the attributeless guy attacked us with the exact kind of magic we use. Not only that, the bastard created a gigantic fire we'd never seen before. The blonde's voice recalled something horrifying. In that blonde's memory, Kayasuk walked with a massive flame dozens of times his height roaring behind him. Sudai looked at them in disbelief and exclaimed he couldn't believe it. Suddenly he stood up and said nonchalantly, fine, I've asked everything I needed to. The group panicked and trembled as they asked, so then? Sudai, turning away, paused and said coldly, teach them a lesson. I don't need weaklings who lose to an incompetent like that. No, that can't be, that's not what you promised, the red-haired one shouted, reaching out and trying to follow him but was held back by those around him. A blue-haired youth, his face badly injured, suddenly spoke up, that one has, his words made Sudai, who was about to leave, pause. No longer human, he blurted, his face showed terror as if he'd seen a demon, his gaze vacant. At that moment the chain led Sudai to a vast place where only his footsteps echoed. As he walked he thought about that expression. The fear wasn't normal. Sudai told himself that to be safe he'd put him in the cat Noir special class, but he only showed extremely strong illusions. He kept walking, monsters' corpses defeated lying scattered behind him. Surely he used a magical weapon or something. I'm pretty sure he dealt with the trainee hunters by dirty means, he thought, laughing smugly. Sudai looked down the path and saw a goblin corpse riddled with wounds lying on the ground. Another monster corpse. Did Ase Kayasuk do this? He wondered, puzzled. He examined the blood on the creature and analyzed to himself, just one ordinary strike. Seems their claims aren't entirely nonsense. But this power isn't frightening at all, he said, his face showing smug satisfaction. Sudai thought of Hideki, dean of Takigo Academy, judging silently. Even Iwako, kicked out of the Pentagonal Saints, could do this. His thoughts were certain, I have no choice but to follow his orders now, but one day I will surpass him, and replace him at the head of the Pentagonal Saints, ruling the world, Sudai fantasized grandly. A smug smile spread across his face, his eyes looking ahead deepened. He schemed inwardly, but to do that, I mustn't let anyone know about my ties to the trainee hunters. As for Ase Kayasuk, who could cause more trouble later, I need to make sure a small accident happens to him by chance, he said, smiling with the corners of his mouth nearly reaching his ears. The chain continued to lead forward, Sudai told himself. He must be nearby. The chain in his hand finally slowed as if it had found its destination. He reeled it in and hid behind a corner to observe. Sudai wondered, alright, what is he doing in a place like this? Sudai looked over and his face contorted as if seeing something horrible, his eyes wide and cold sweat pouring out uncontrollably. In front of him, Kayasuk was sitting atop a pile of monster corpses. A smug smile on his face, the man spoke, you're late, I was getting bored waiting. Sudai quickly hid behind the wall again, his entire body trembling. He thought, my presence should have been completely concealed. Kayasuk smiled and calmly asked, so you were wondering how he detected my presence, weren't you, Yoichi? He gritted his teeth, eyes full of contempt. He thought to himself, can he read my mind? At that moment Sudai stepped out and snapped, what the hell are you? Hearing that, Kayasuk replied calmly, I heard Iwako chose you, but you're not as impressive as I expected. Kayasuk looked down with a cold glare and a low voice. The way you hunt rookies and extort their money is just like that coward Iwako. Sudai's face showed some anger. What? How did you know about that? Kayasuk jumped down, his voice slow, Yoichi, do you really enjoy tormenting others? Light poured over his back, making his whole presence feel overpowering. He asked softly, but you've never understood what it feels like to be hunted, have you? Now I'll teach you that feeling, Kayasuk said coldly. With that magic, I will make you pay for me, he said. Kayasuk's face cold as he looked at the man before him, expression tinged with eagerness. Seeing Kayasuk's overwhelming stance, Sudai shouted in anger, you're a dangerous bastard. Too dangerous, he growled, his eyes growing more furious. As he finished speaking, he summoned his sword, a blinding golden blade radiating a wondrous power, for my ambition. Sudai lunged, attacking while declaring bluntly, I will defeat you here at any cost. Kayasuk easily avoided Sudai's attack, remaining relaxed with his hands casually in his pockets. Kayasuk concentrated a surge of power in his palm and taunted, "Is that all? Is that really your true strength?" He unleashed the flame in his hand, colossal as if intent on devouring everything in its path. Sudai swung his sword, still extremely arrogant. "You think you can beat me with that level?" As he spoke, Sudai looked up to see a mysterious blue lightning bolt fired at him. By reflex Sudai raised his sword and blocked the attack. Beneath his feet a few stones had fallen, but a golden aura surrounded them. Surprisingly, those stones rose as if to strike. Sudai gripped his sword tightly, taking up a ready combat stance. Sudai glared at him angrily and ground his teeth. Damn it, he can actually use multi-attribute magic. What exactly is his void attribute like? He began, but before he finished, Kayasuk leapt from behind him, eyes razor-sharp. Sudai seemed to notice something, his eyes widened. He turned around and quickly raised his sword to block the blow. "Damn it, you just keep getting in the way of my plans." Sudai ground out each word. After the collision, both were knocked back, sliding and leaving a long streak on the ground. Kayasuk said indifferently, "Your plan?" Sudai replied, confident, "Yes, one day I will surpass Iwako." He laughed loudly and voiced his ambition. "Then I will replace him and become one of the Pentagonal Saints." Kayasuk asked coldly, "Why Iwako? Why him?" "There are many other Pentagonal Saints," Sudai squinted, smiling as he said slowly, "because him. He's someone who was once expelled from the Pentagonal Saints. If I become a saint, I will have the right to dominate the world," he said as if stating the obvious. He suddenly paused then cheerfully added, "So if you think about it, targeting the weakest makes sense." Kayasuk turned his head, his face full of disgust at Sudai's dirty scheme. He said one word, "Coward." Hearing that, Sudai angrily demanded, "What did you just say?" A layer of strange blue light radiated around Kayasuk. He rested the sword on his shoulder and said to Sudai with one hand propping it, "I was worried you might have approached Iwako first. But if your ambition is that petty, then I have nothing to worry about." Kayasuk looked down, his face filled with disgust and contempt for Tsudai's actions. Hearing this, the cheerful Tsudai suddenly lost control, his eyes widened as he stared at Kayasuk before him. The man with the sword lunged in fury, shouting, "Shut up! What's wrong with wanting power, money, and women?" he yelled, brandishing his sword in a flurry as he fought and screamed. He shouted into Kayasuk's face, trying to prove himself right. "Power that lets you trample others with no one daring to speak. That's the power I want," he roared, face to face with the calmly composed Kayasuk. Tsudai laughed savagely and ambitiously. "If I become a Pentagonal Saint, I can do whatever I want, and once I attain that position, I will learn the Saintess's weakness, and then I will make that woman mine." Tsudai voiced his vile and sick thoughts that would make others despise him. The two continued to fight. Kayasuk replied coldly, "It seems what you say isn't even worth my listening to." "It's time to end this," Kayasuk said, delivering a powerful sword strike that sent his opponent flying. Tsudai looked at the cracked fragments of his sword and screamed in fear, "No way, my sword." Kayasuk tossed his own sword aside and said, "Thanks to your useless babble. I've already prepared that spell." Hearing this Tsudai cried in terror, Don't come near me." "Now, let me see how you dance," he said coldly, his dark eyes flashing with a sharp light. No sooner had he finished than Kayasuk stepped forward and cast a spell on him, absolute hypnosis. As the spell took effect, Tsudai, who had been struggling, went completely still, his face became blank. Then he collapsed like a statue, producing a loud thud. Kayasuk gazed down thoughtfully, thinking to himself, this spell requires the caster to first shatter the target's spirit, but once activated. "Hey, get up," Kayasuk ordered, and each of his joints slowly began to move. He felt as if some force lifted him, his whole body still rigid like a log. Tsudai tilted his head and replied in a hollow voice, "Yes, sir, I have stood up." Kayasuk smirked, watching the man with interest, thinking to himself, "It seems to have worked." He gave a slow command, "For now, focus on completing the mission, I will give further orders later." Tsudai replied oddly, "Yes, I understand, seeming a bit uncomfortable. Kayasuk ordered, "Return to your normal way of speaking." After those words, the other man's eyes brightened and he returned to normal, no longer vacant like before. Tsudai turned and walked back the way he came, answering, "I will return to lead the group." Kayasuk watched him walk away slowly, his face inscrutable. Suddenly Kayasuk smiled, a flash of triumph in his eyes. At that moment, as Kayasuk stepped out of the dark place, a sweet voice rang out. Karen ran up, worried, and asked, "Kayasuk, where have you been?" I was so worried. Kayasuk smiled apologetically. Ah, sorry, I was just talking with Yoichi for a bit. Karen, slightly surprised, wondered, with Yoichi. What were you two talking about? He replied calmly, just a little about how to make dreams come true. Karen smiled and asked, did you get any good advice? He pictured Sudai's vacant face under his hypnosis and couldn't hide a flicker of pleasure, answering calmly, yes, I got excellent advice, one of my dreams will surely become reality. Karen cheerfully said, I hope your dream comes true soon. Kayasuk replied, yeah, I hope so too. Then someone called out, special class is almost over, everyone, gather immediately. Karen heard the announcement and urged, let's go, Kayasuk, we can't be left behind. Watching Karen's retreating back, Kayasuk thought, I'm really glad I joined this class. Because finally I have a pawn Iwako won't suspect. He smiled, a slight, pleased smile tinged with hard-to-spot smugness. In Principal Hideki's office at Takigo Academy, Hideki sat in the comfortable principal's chair, turned around, glanced irritably at the man before him, and asked, so, any progress on the apprentice hunter's case? Sudai respectfully bowed and handed the file to him, yes, sir. As expected, a student with a special ability is involved in the case. That file belonged to someone they all knew, the familiar ID photo attached. The student was Ase Kayasuk, a first year with the void attribute. Sudai reported seriously to his master, I detained him at the usual location and interrogated him. He admitted using multi-attribute magic to defeat the apprentice hunters. Hearing this, Hideki paused at the odd detail and narrowed his eyes, asking again, multi-attribute magic? What are you saying? Just as you'd expect, Hideki will be surprised by what I've gathered, Sudai said with a sinister smile. But he didn't fully admit it, so as not to spoil the plan. He said, the details aren't clear yet, give me more time and I'm confident I can investigate further. Then he suggested, speaking of which, it's been a while. It's been a long time since we worked together, why don't you take action yourself this time? He added, a crafty look and dangerous glint on his face, lips curling as if plotting something. Hideki showed no suspicion. He looked up at the ceiling, thought for a moment, then agreed, sounds not bad. He cracked his knuckles with a snap, his gaze full of boredom seeking new amusement. It's been a long time since I tortured someone, I'll make him pay properly for all the trouble he caused you and me. Sudai didn't hesitate, then, let us, before he could finish, the phone rang and cut him off. Hideki frowned at the ringing landline and clicked his tongue, wondering who would be calling at this hour. Hideki waved his hand to signal the man before him to go ahead, I'll come later. Yes, sir, see you then. The man bowed respectfully and stepped down. Hideki picked up the receiver and said, Iwako speaking. A sharp female voice piped up, oh, isn't this the great principal? Thank you so much for choosing our company in yesterday's bid. Hideki recognized the voice at once and snapped, don't play games. Lei Ruashi, the woman on the line, sounded fashionable and important at first impression, short, stylish hair, an air of wealth. She smiled, aren't you falling for it? After all, we're partners sharing government subsidies. You're the CEO of Lei Company, the pentagonal Saint Lei Ruashi. Hideki leaned back comfortably and said, you haven't changed at all. I don't have time for banter, I have to deal with that matter personally, so sorry, I'm busy now, let's talk another time. Roshi retorted sarcastically, what could keep a principal who rules the academy and lines his pockets like you busy? Hit where it hurt, Hideki snapped angrily, watch your mouth. But he had more pressing concerns, so his anger subsided, forget it. I'm investigating a student with the void attribute. Roshi asked in surprise, the void attribute? What can a loser like that do? Hideki didn't elaborate, answering tersely, yes, but still, it's a special attribute. His expression and tone changed immediately, so anything could happen, right? Roshi thought for a moment, her beautiful face taking on a somewhat terrifying expression. She spoke up, you mean something like Kyoichiro's time magic? At the familiar name, Hideki's face changed, he gripped the phone tightly, his eyes full of hatred. Hideki barked into the receiver, don't mention that name, it makes me sick. Roshi had to pull the phone away as she snorted, you're still hot-headed as ever, huh? Her gaze also held loathing for that name, she sympathized with him, but I don't blame you. Since he awakened that power, the balance of power among adventurers has completely shifted. Her full red lips curled into a dangerous smile, she didn't want to interfere, fine, I'll contact you later. Goodbye. The line went dead with a dial tone. After hanging up, Hideki turned sour, threw the phone down hard on the desk, and spat angrily, "Selfish vixen." But it wasn't just Roshi who angered him, there was also that old friend they'd mentioned. He grumbled, "Still, hearing that damned name again after all these years makes me furious." Hideki's face darkened, his eyes scheming. He growled, "Isn't this the perfect time to unleash all this fury?" After some time, Hideki, following Tsudai's instructions, went himself to investigate that unusual first-year student. He entered the forest, only a few steps from the factory. Arriving at the door, he walked and thought, "Now, how should I torture him?" Pouring water, nail-pulling, an array of horrible punishments flashed through his mind. A lock appeared on the door. Hideki used his fingerprint to activate it. His face looked utterly evil, eager to indulge his perverse pleasure in tormenting others. He smiled slyly, "I'll vent the anger I couldn't take out on Kyoichiro on this boy." The door activated. He was pleased. "Good, it's open." Hideki opened the door and said, "Sorry to keep you waiting, Tsudai." But inside the factory it was empty, no one to be seen, no Tsudai, only old tools and spare parts. Unexpectedly, Hideki was surprised. "What the? There's nobody here." While he was distracted, Tsudai raised his sword and attacked from behind. Hideki noticed and turned to see the blade swing. His eyes widened in surprise. But with profound strength, he caught the glowing blade with just 2 fingers without even looking back. Hideki, furious at his subordinate's betrayal, snarled, "It seems you underestimated me. Probably from the arrogance bred by all those compliments, right, Tsudai?" The man suddenly looked panicked, his painstakingly prepared plan had collapsed. Hideki flew into rage, his palms glowed as he prepared a retaliatory strike. "Do you really think you can defeat me with just that?" A very long golden chain appeared, winding swiftly around Tsudai. Hideki's eyes were murderous, wanting to eliminate him immediately. He yanked the chain hard. In the blink of an eye it had coiled tightly around Tsudai's body from head to toe. It even gagged him and hung him upside down high in the air. After tying Tsudai up, he angrily delivered a kick. "No way someone like you could be my match." Bound tight and helpless, Tsudai was kicked away, unable to cry out even from the pain. He stepped closer and said, "You picked the wrong enemy, you bastard." Tsudai struggled and screamed, terrified as the man's footsteps drew nearer. Hideki came before him, fists clenched in fury. "You destroyed yourself with those foolish ambitions, Yoichi Tsudai." A voice sounded, still as stupid as ever, "Huh." Hideki was startled, his heart leaping. There was another person here he hadn't noticed. He turned and stammered, Who is there?" In the darkness Kyosuke stepped out and said, "Kneel before the strong and prey on the weak." He looked at the man before him mockingly, "You seem as greedy and foolish as ever." Hideki's eyes bulged in anger. Someone dared to run rampant in his territory. He threatened, "How dare you insult me? I'm the academy principal." He's the same as always, fond of flaunting authority and using power to oppress others. Kyosuke stepped forward and calmly replied, "Destroying yourself over foolish ambition. Sounds like the perfect self-introduction for you, Iwako Hideki." Hearing that, Hideki boiled with rage, his face flushed and veins bulged. He snarled, "Who the hell are you, bastard?" Kyosuke strode out coolly, hands in his pockets, walking slowly. Hideki recognized that he wore the school uniform. Hideki shouted, "I'll expel you, give me your student ID number." The angrier Hideki got, the more delighted Kyosuke became. He grinned wickedly and soothed, Now, calm down. Finally we've reached this step, so let's talk slowly for a bit, just the two of us. Kyosuke has waited a long time for this day. The grudge from his past life will be settled little by little. Outside, dusk fell and the treetops were dyed a nostalgic gold, a fitting scene to resolve old matters. Seeing Hideki losing his temper, Kyosuke calmly suggested, "Why not have a little talk with me?" Iwako Hideki, he boldly called the man's name straight out. Though he was the principal of a major school, for a lowly student to dare call him by name made Hideki grind his teeth. "How dare you mock me?" His hands began to glow as before when confronting Tsudai. Chunks of earth around them were lifted into the air as his power manipulated the ground. Hideki clenched his fist, eyes flashing with anger, confident, "I'll show you how wide the gap in strength between us is." Take this high-level earth magic. An enormous hand, modeled after his own but 100 times larger and made of rock and soil, rose up from the ground and soared into the sky. It clenched into a massive fist and lunged like a punch. Hideki's pupils glowed yellow as he used his power to control the earth, the hand forming into a fist just like the giant Maka. He curled his mouth in contempt. A student like you can't possibly dodge this. He thrust the powerful fist toward Kayasuke, shouting, die. Immediately, instead of moving himself to strike, the giant fist, under his control, flew straight at Kayasuke. Kayasuke remained brazenly calm as the fist flew right up to his face. A tremendous collision sent earth and stone scattering and raised a thick cloud of dust. Hideki looked up at the sky and laughed with satisfaction. This is the price a mediocre student like you pays for opposing me. Through the smoke after the attack, the factory could be seen, half collapsed, the ground cracked by the immense force, no sign of anyone inside. With such power, an ordinary student would be shattered or at least dying. Hideki smirked smugly. Maybe I was a bit heavy-handed. I'll think of another place to torture him. And I still don't know who you are, but I'll stay to watch you die. The explosion's dust had splattered mud on his face, so he reached into his jacket for a handkerchief to wipe himself. Wiping his face with the handkerchief, Hideki slowly approached the half-destroyed factory to witness Kayasuke's death, complaining, what a nuisance. He looked ahead in surprise. When the smoke cleared, a lone figure still stood at the center of the rubble as if nothing had happened. Hideki froze. What? Kayasuke walked slowly toward him. Although Kayasuke had originally proposed a peaceful talk, the man had rudely started the fight first, so Kayasuke frowned and asked calmly, I told you I only wanted to talk a bit. He had no injuries or scratches, not even dust, leaving Hideki astonished. What, you're completely unharmed despite being hit by my high-level spell? No student has ever been like this. He angrily pointed and demanded, what the hell are you? Say your name, now. Kayasuke smiled at the question, rubbing his chin teasingly. Who am I? Haven't you figured out who I am yet? His face darkened and his eyes flashed with a counter-question. Of course he couldn't imagine reincarnation, so Hideki replied, what? I don't know any bastard like you, don't joke around, tell me your name. Kayasuke rubbed the back of his neck, smirked, and said softly, I truly am very hurt, Iwako. Could it be that you've really forgotten me? Your current image is exactly like Kyoichiro, the friend from Hideki's past, who once spoke to him in this same tone. He panicked, his face drained of color, his mouth drooped into a whimper. No, you are. He was utterly shocked, his legs buckling slightly as he turned away, unwilling to accept the truth. Impossible. Hideki couldn't believe his eyes. He clutched his head, refusing to accept it. That person was clearly. His eyes lit up as he remembered something. His face was no longer fearful. You bastard. Don't put on that cheap act. You watched the news about the past, didn't you? He snapped, glaring at Kayasuke with contempt. He gritted his teeth. That one, Misato Kyoichiro. He raised his hand and cast a jade-green power. Hideki shouted angrily, he's already dead. A whirlwind of earth and stone formed around him. Kayasuke closed his eyes and sighed as he looked at his former friend. He stepped slowly closer and said, you're always like this, only believing what suits you and ignoring what you don't like. Hideki could no longer contain himself, terrified inside but outwardly aggressive. He threatened, don't talk nonsense, take one more step and I'll strike you. Kayasuke curled a lip, I see, you were swayed by the sweet words of those around you. As he spoke, he cast a spell, gathering energy into a small yellow orb that grew in his palm, unknown to Hideki, who was panic-stricken by Kayasuke's words. Kayasuke asked sharply, and because of that, you betrayed me, Misato Kyoichiro, didn't you? His gaze was so strong it seemed to pierce Hideki's heart. The greatest hatred came not from outsiders but from his closest friend. Hit in the heart, Hideki shouted, shut up. Then, full of rage, he hurled a powerful attack at him. But having openly stepped forward to confront him, Kayasuke had planned for this. His eyes flared as he raised his hand to gather power. As Hideki's attack lunged, Kayasuke cast magic. A streak of golden light sliced across the jade-green stripe. His attack was nullified, instantly dissolving to Hideki's stupefaction. He stared wide-eyed at the familiar technique and murmured, what, this magic? It was the same move Kyoichiro had used back then. In his memory, that friend used a similar technique to slay monsters. His redirected attack struck the ground nearby with a loud crash and choking smoke. The two men regarded each other like strangers yet acquaintances, the surrounding trees violently shaking from the blast's force. Hideki collapsed to his knees. Impossible. He couldn't believe his eyes. I'm sure we sealed him in the prison. Seeing his old friend break down before him, Kayasuke stepped forward to explain, I was imprisoned. And thrown into the depths of despair, Kayasuke bowed his head and looked at the wretched Hideki, the one who caused the tragedy in his life, his eyes burning with hatred from his past life. Hideki stammered, You're really Misato Kyoichiro? Kayasuke knelt on one knee and replied, It took quite a while, didn't it? He broke into a bright smile and said, Long time no see, I'm glad you still remember me, Iwako. Hideki, kneeling on the ground, looked up dazed and asked hesitantly, You're Misato Kyoichiro? Suddenly he sprang to his feet decisively. He waved his hand and shouted, Don't take me for a fool, do you mean to say he's dead and returned to this world? Clinging to his own conviction, Hideki cast the skill once more. He said decisively and with malice, If you're a ghost, you'd better stay quiet and mind your place. This time not one but 5 strikes launched at Kayasuke simultaneously. He lightly shifted his foot. He smoothly dodged all of Hideki's moves without using his hands, both hands tucked neatly into his pockets. Kayasuke looked up into the sky. The earth fist he controlled immediately slammed down from above onto the ground, and Kayasuke evaded it with graceful timing. Hideki clicked his tongue in annoyance and spat, You insolent brat. He calculated silently to himself, But I must seize the upper hand. Even as a golden seeker I didn't join battles, so to this day the saints still mock me for that. Rage boiled within Hideki, he clenched his fist and ground his teeth, but, that doesn't mean I'm weak. Instantly Hideki spun lightly, like a conductor, sending earth and stone swirling in a storm, his power glowing jade green. Hideki said proudly, This is the technique I've painstakingly perfected for 20 years, wind-earth, a twin-branch magic. Countless chunks of rock, large and small, were carried by the vortex like a hailstorm. He opened his mouth and shouted, Take this. The rocks hurtled forward at nearly the speed of light. The gusts of wind-driven earth and stone surged like powerful jade-green streaks. The hail of rocks struck the ground where Kayasuke stood with devastating force. With such relentless assault, the ground there exploded, flinging debris everywhere. Because he used a combined technique, Hideki dropped to his knee, panting, yet still smug. Well, how do you like that? This is my strongest spell. He carefully peered toward the blast to see how his enemy fared. Smoke and leaves swirled everywhere. Seeing the black smoke, unlike the previous attack, Kayasuke did not counterattack this time. He thought to himself, he isn't fighting back. A look of delight crossed Hideki's face and he smiled faintly. Then he tilted his head to the sky and screamed with joy, I did it, I really did it. His face, consumed by ambition, now revealed greed, malice, and cruelty as he shouted, I've defeated that bastard Misato Kyoichiro. Hideki raised his fist as if to show he achieved what he couldn't before, sneering, You think after all these years I'm still the same, idiot? No matter how strong your attribute or time power was, it's all in the past. Do you know how many years have passed? 20 years, 20 damned years. The me you knew back then, is no longer who I am now. Having achieved the feat of defeating Kyoichiro, he could brag for the rest of his life. Defeating you partly restores Hideki's confidence and proves his current strength, he said satisfied, Don't you dare underestimate me. He grinned maliciously, 20 years have passed, my level has risen, it's only natural that I'm stronger now. Hideki breathed a sigh of relief at having destroyed his enemy and was pleased with the result. He squinted as he thought of his rivals, Finally I defeated Kyoichiro, now I won't let them look down on me anymore. The true strongest among the pentagonal saints is me. Hideki sank into complete madness, countless evil thoughts showing on his wicked face. A voice rang out, Finished already? Hideki's face fell, his pupils shrinking in fear. He panicked, Kayasuke is intact, calmly brushing dust off his clothes with his hand. His face darkened as he pointed at him and shouted, How is this possible? Took all those blows and still. Kayasuke smiled in admiration, You've learned some strong spells too, truly a hero of this age. A strange white aura appeared around him before anyone noticed. Kayasuke said, Now, I can vent my anger without holding back anymore, he said with a bright, squinting smile. He clenched his fist, powerful energy flared with different colored glints. Hideki's face drained of blood, he was in utter panic. This one, he's a monster. He tried to steady himself, but I can't retreat now after all the effort I put in to reach today. Hideki refused to give up and continue to cast earth magic, I won't let you mock me any longer. A giant hand formed from earth magic lunged toward Kayasuke's position. It immediately closed around him, squeezing tightly. Hideki inwardly exulted, got him now. But Kayasuke disappointed him, murmuring, Oh dear. You still bark as loud as ever, Kayasuke used water magic to stop the hand from crushing him. Because Hideki's power was earth, when it met water it turned into soft, muddy sludge and lost the hand's original form. He taunted, "You think that's enough to beat me?" The mud and earth, transformed, flowed back toward Hideki. He panicked, "No, don't. Stay away from me, get back." He used wind magic to push them away. Kayasuke waved his hand, creating a streak of wind magic similar in nature but unlike Hideki's jade-green wind, his was emerald. His wind magic formed a massive vortex that sucked up all of Hideki's wind spells. The vortex's range grew and its power became immense, choking the area with dust. Hideki had to shield himself from the fierce swirl. The vortex drew closer and closer to him. Hideki was struck by his own attack in reverse. He was hurled backward, his head slamming into a nearby tree as he screamed in pain. Not done, Kayasuke cast fire magic and stood before him. Hideki crawled backward in fear. Realizing he couldn't win, Hideki knelt and begged, "I'm sorry, Kyoichiro, I'm begging you, please spare me." He looked utterly pitiful, his clothes and face smeared with mud. Hideki slammed his head against the ground, "I'm sorry for what happened 20 years ago. So please." At his desperate plea, Kayasuke remained silent, pressing his lips together. While he bowed his head to the ground, Hideki smiled slyly, "Kyoichiro is a kind idiot, if I act like this, he'll surely, truly a fox can't change its nature, he's still the same, only caring about his own benefit." At his desperate plea, Kayasuke remained silent, pressing his lips together. Contrary to his expectations, Kayasuke replied coldly, "Shut up." He suddenly looked up and said, "Huh, you mean this is how you trapped me back then? You think I'll let that happen again?" A terrifying aura emanated from Kayasuke, his face darkened, his old hatred immense. "Forgiving him so easily would be unworthy of what you put me through." Hearing that, Hideki leapt up in fear and said hurriedly, "Wait, Kyoichiro, we were friends once, weren't we?" His fury reached its peak, killing intent flashing in his eyes. Kayasuke growled, "You have no right to say that, especially after turning me into a vengeful demon." He gathered power in his fist. He punched Hideki's hateful face without mercy. Not just once, he unleashed a barrage of punches over Hideki's entire body, repaying the grudge from their past life up to now. After taking so many blows, Hideki couldn't resist and spat blood. Regret gnawed at him. He realized the image of Kayasuke before him was like a demon punishing the crimes he had committed. Hideki gasped his last, "You shouldn't have messed with this guy." Finally a mighty palm strike landed, a powerful blast that sent him flying for miles like a rocket, tearing through even large trees. Hideki's head slammed hard against a tree trunk. Kayasuke stood before him and said, "You should thank me for not killing you. I still have one question to ask." Hideki was now an empty shell, completely unconscious, his body burned by ice and fire, bruised all over, frothing at the mouth. Seeing him like that, Kayasuke said, "But, you won't hear me anymore, right?" The sunset light hit half of Kayasuke's face as he coldly stared at the traitorous enemy, as if partly settling a long-held grudge. Hideki slowly opened his eyes as pain spread through his body. Kayasuke looked down from above in an icy tone, "Hey, you're finally awake." He panicked and retreated a full 100 meters. His face turned pale and his voice trembled as he shouted, "Please, don't kill me." Kayasuke smiled faintly with a hint of contempt, "Oh, I won't kill you." He tilted his head up with casual composure, which only terrified him more, but his pupils glinted gold as he threatened in a low voice, "You'll answer my question, won't you?" His hand reached into his chest as if searching for something. "All right, first." He pulled out a phone, the screen was lit showing a name. "Tell me about this woman." Hideki's eyes widened as if he recognized the person. He jumped up in alarm, "My phone." But Kayasuke coldly stared at the first name on it, "In your call history, this Lei called you today." The gentle expression on Kayasuke's face turned to anger. "What did you two talk about?" A bead of sweat rolled down his cheek as he stammered, "That, because Lei is coming to Japan in 3 days, I thought she wanted to talk about that, but..." A knowing smile appeared on his lips, as if he finally understood. Memories of past betrayal surfaced. 3 days from now, Lei will. His hand relaxed slightly, confidence showed on his handsome face. "I've decided what to do." Hideki hurriedly caught the phone as Kayasuke tossed it back, "Here, treat Lei as you normally would for now." He suddenly raised a finger to his lips to signal silence, "But don't tell her anything about my identity." He thrust a finger at him and declared firmly, "While you were unconscious, I placed a charm on your heart." A flame slowly appeared in his palm, if you tell her who I am." As he clenched his hand, the flame quickly erupted into a terrible explosion. This drained even more color from his face until he looked lifeless, then boom, "Remember to keep your promise." He turned his back and walked away, leaving him behind. Inside he was quietly pleased to have fooled Hideki. He hadn't actually used that magic. Meanwhile the man clutched his head in panic, lips pressed tight, but with Iwako's personality, a threat like that was more than enough. In the end he collapsed to his knees with no will left. "I won't put you under absolute hypnosis, Iwako, because I want you to be desperate while fully conscious." A sinister smile silently appeared on Kayasuke's face. The flight attendants were carefully pushing service carts down the cabin. 3 days later, Roshi gazed thoughtfully, glancing at the hazy scene outside the airplane window. The bodyguard walking beside her quietly reminded her, "Ms. Lei, we're almost there." A flight attendant's announcement slowly came over the PA, "Ladies and gentlemen, the plane will soon be landing at." Suddenly someone screamed, drawing her attention. A group of hijackers appeared out of nowhere and seized the flight attendant. "This plane is under our control now." One of them aimed a gun at the passengers and ordered, "Everybody get down." Then Roshi suddenly stood up as if unconcerned by the chaos. She calmly stepped toward the hijacker who was shouting, "If you don't follow my orders." Suddenly she was right beside him in an instant. It was. With a decisive move she knocked the hijacker down. He stared wide-eyed, unable to believe what was happening. In moments she had completely neutralized the rest of them. The passengers in the cabin were astonished by her appearance. It was. They cheered for her charismatic, powerful presence. The pentagonal Saint Lei Roshi were saved. In the end the hijackers were apprehended as soon as the plane landed. The welcoming man bowed sincerely to offer his thanks. "Ms. Lei, I don't know how to thank you enough." Her youthful face broke into a kind, unpretentious smile. "I'm glad I was on this flight. Thanks to that, the airline's reputation was spared a stain." She then glanced at the gun in her bodyguard's hand. More importantly, it seemed to be a special model undetectable by scanners. Roshi's tone dropped a few degrees, as if negotiating covertly. "Recently many groups have been using devices made from dungeon materials, so." She placed a hand on the man's shoulder with sympathy and understanding. "I need to equip my staff with some self-defense items." A dangerous smile curved her lips and her tone turned threatening, "Like the weapon you're carrying." He bowed his head in fear and hurriedly replied without protest, "Of course, I'll arrange it immediately." In the airport dozens of people were moving about, searching for their flights. She pressed the phone to her ear and quietly instructed, "It's me, let the hijackers go." Her bodyguard glanced at his mistress and smiled softly. "Everything went smoothly, didn't it?" She fully agreed, unable to hide her amusement. "This is rather entertaining." Recalling the earlier chaos on the plane, her voice rose. Planting those hijackers ended up being the decisive move that made the deal succeed. The man's cowering, deferential manner from before amused her. The cheers from the crowd outside the queue lifted her spirits. "Look, this also serves well to polish her reputation." The crowd kept excitedly chanting her name, "Ms. Lei, truly a hero, Lei Roshi indeed." A practiced smile appeared on her lips as she waved warmly. A convoy of cars pulled up in front of a solemn-looking school. She stepped out of the car with composure and walked ahead. "Now, it's time to handle the matter that brought me to Japan." A wooden door bore a sign reading, "Principal's Office." Hideki stood dazed, looking out with a face covered in wounds. A soft sound now was enough to draw his attention. Roshi entered from outside with a friendly manner. "Excuse my intrusion, Iwako." She sat down leisurely and spoke with him. "You said you investigated a student with the void attribute. Any progress?" His eyes shifted slightly. Feeling uneasy, he chose his words carefully. "No, it turned out to be a false alarm. As you said, that student was just a useless failure." She sipped her tea calmly and continued, "Is that so? A rare attribute, so what? In the end it was nothing special." But Hideki felt like an ant on a hot pan. If he said the wrong thing the charm would activate. He only needed to answer normally. She gently set the teacup down and her tone grew serious. "Then let me get straight to the main issue." Darkness quickly obscured most of the cruel expression on her face. "About the new drug we're developing, who should be our next test subject?" She crossed her long legs lightly and remarked, "You've been good at exploiting this academy's systems." Meanwhile, in Kayasuke's earpiece, audio from the principal's office played. "First, start with the student roster." Standing on the rooftop, he muttered under his breath, "How despicable." His face turned icily cold as he declared in a low voice, "The next one who tastes despair will be you, Lei Roshi." The TV in Kayasuke's room crackled on with the day's news. yesterday, the pentagonal Saint Lei Roshi set foot in Japan. He listened silently to every word with an indifferent expression. She received much praise for subduing the hijackers, who had. Seeing Roshi's smiling image on the news, he thought to himself, Lei Roshi, one of those who betrayed me 20 years ago. She casually glanced at the ornate hourglass in her hand. She made special weapons from dungeon materials and seemed to have amassed a fortune from that trade, but he recalled the situation he had overheard. Based on his earlier conversation with Iwako, it seemed she was using this school for shady dealings. He stood up, put on his coat, and thought, outwardly a hero, yet behind the scenes exploiting others for gain. A sneer appeared on his thin lips. I can't let this go. Then he stepped out the door and headed straight toward his target. The scene shifted to the school's hallway, bustling with laughter. He held his phone in his hand, mulling over tactics. But how should I strike? The phone screen showed the latest report on Roshi. Security has been strict here ever since she set foot in the academy. Finally he had decided on his own course of action. First, investigate the situation. Just then someone called from behind, Kayasu. Recognizing who it was, he greeted softly. Is that you? Asahi, Karen replied cheerfully in a gentle voice. Good morning. She stepped closer to look at his phone. You reading about Mr. Lei? He glanced over coldly and tossed out, yeah, I'm just skimming. Karen's petite face showed unabashed admiration. Mr. Lei is amazing. Yesterday she defeated those hijackers. She paused briefly before continuing, and the great serpent Changsan clan is also very famous. His eyes lit up at the new information, Changsan clan. She explained innocently as they walked, it's the family Mr. Lei founded, and it has many powerful members. He briefly remembered those bodyguard-like figures. I see, the people in black protecting Lei are from that clan. Karen excitedly went on praising, many students here plan to join the military. What about you, Kayasuk? He let out a soft laugh, wanting to refuse, no. But he suddenly hesitated, as if remembering something. Wait. A slender hand lightly stroked Kayasuk's chin as he calculated carefully, if I use that clan, I can get close to Lei. He finally moved forward with steady steps. All right. He waved goodbye to Karen and didn't forget to say a few words. Thanks, Asahi. Because of you I know what to do. She stood at the classroom door watching his hurried back. A big question mark popped over her head. It's nothing. Inside the elegant wooden cabinet were a series of prestigious awards. Hideki sitting at his desk was startled by the phone's ring. Hello. He carefully lifted the receiver and spoke in a soft, whisper-like voice. It's me. He looked up at the deep blue sky and murmured, Hey, Iwako, I need a favor. On the other end came the man's hesitant, timid reply, What's the matter? He merely smiled faintly and requested in a low voice, if Lei contacts you. The scene shifted to some kind of laboratory. A man tied up and kneeling on the floor was surrounded by several researchers. The door was suddenly thrown open and light fell on a familiar silhouette. Roshi stood with her hands on her hips, full of confidence, and asked, Well, how does it look? The man, pale with panic, begged, Please, don't inject that drug into me anymore. If this continues I'll die. A stiletto heel was suddenly brought before his face, making him even more terrified. She decisively kicked him to the floor without mercy. Despite his trembling, she remained cold and made her decision. No way, I won't listen to the opinion of a lab rat. Her red lips curved into a meaningful, delighted smile. Don't be so pessimistic. She carefully ground her heel into his cheek, causing his pupils to contract. If your body is compatible with this drug, you'll become even stronger. She turned and walked away, lightly snapping her fingers as a signal. So, begin. Seeing the syringe filled with red fluid, the man screamed even louder. Please, wait, I still. But the medics quickly injected the fluid into his neck. His whole body went rigid and his scream cut off midway. Immediately the screams turned into agonized wails. The man struggled for a while and finally collapsed. His face went blank and his speech degraded into meaningless moans. After watching, she couldn't help but sigh, language lost this time. It seems the drug won't work unless there's some magical ability. The door opened again with a soft sound. We still need more data. A bodyguard followed and cautiously reported the next steps. We'll soon need more test subjects. She crossed her arms in agreement. Indeed. A wicked smile appeared on Roshi's lips as she tapped her fingers crazily. As usual, we'll disguise it as recruitment for the great serpent Changsan. She casually entered the elevator while contacting Hideki. Hello, Iwako, about the test subjects we discussed earlier. Leaning gracefully against the elevator wall she requested softly, I need people skilled in magic. Could you select a few students from your academy? On the other end he remained silent and didn't answer immediately. After a moment he finally spoke up with a suggestion. If so, how about this? She stood in the elevator and listened to every word. We can hold a selection trial right at the academy. That way it's easy to filter out the capable ones, right? The corner of her mouth curved slightly, her face betraying a malicious intent. Sometimes you do come up with good ideas. The elevator announced, ground floor. She stepped out calmly, filled with delight. The date and details will be announced later. On the other end, Hideki quickly hung up. He put his hands behind his back and silently gazed at the sky through the window. I've done as you asked, Kyoichiro. The scene cut to the crowded main hall as someone announced, I have an announcement. A bodyguard on the podium announced solemnly, the Great Serpent Changsan has decided to hold a selection examination to recruit new members. This caused an uproar among the students below. Really? This is our chance to join that famous family. Kyosuke couldn't help but smile faintly as he stood in the ranks. His gaze fixed on the man on the podium, so the path to approach lay has opened. That morning on the sports field, students and judges gathered. A judge spoke, thank you for attending the Great Serpent Changsan selection trial. A male judge with long hair began to outline the rules. I will explain how this trial will be conducted. While the judge explained the procedures, Kyosuke silently calculated, to join the Great Serpent Changsan and get close to Lei, I must pass this trial. When I approached Iwako before, I tried not to attract attention, but this time it's the opposite. I'll draw the attention of Yang Sinyu, Lei's right hand, and the judges. I'll display my strength. Standing lost in thought in the corridor, a voice suddenly called out, Kyosuke. It was Karen approaching to greet him. Are you entering the trial? Kyosuke nodded softly, yeah. You too. His eyes flickered. I don't want her involved in this, but, Karen smiled shyly, cutting off his thoughts. I know I don't really belong here, but I have my reasons for participating. With a determined smile she looked at Kyosuke. Do your best so we can both get through the trial together. Kyosuke told himself he must pass at all costs. At the stadium the judges announced, we will begin the test to measure your mana. He then pointed to a golden orb. This measuring device will display the mana of anyone who touches it. We will conduct mana measurements here, so please step up one by one. The first young man stepped forward and touched the mana meter. After he left there was a sigh and the judge announced his score. The judge called the next name. Next, Ase Kyosuke. Kyosuke stepped up with a friendly smile. Please, go ahead. He held his student ID out and stepped forward. Seeing the information on the card, the judge showed no expectation. Void attribute level 30, looks like no hope. Kyosuke placed his hand on the mana meter. A blinding light erupted, shocking the entire hall. The judge, dazed by the light, still couldn't grasp what had happened. The students around were stunned too. What the hell is that? Crazy. Kyosuke remained standing by the meter as everyone present gaped. He turned back and asked confidently, that's it, right? The judge, still unsure, replied, Kyosuke walked away while the panel began recording his rank. Among all who had been measured, only Kyosuke achieved an S rank. The next part of the exam was the magic skill test. Kyosuke started forming a sphere of earth and stone. A judge behind commented, he only made a lump of earth. Having lots of mana alone isn't enough. Suddenly the corner of Kyosuke's mouth curled into a knowing smile. In his hand now was a water attribute sphere. Witnessing this, the judges were astonished that Kyosuke could form two spheres of different attributes at once. His smile hadn't faded as a fire attribute sphere formed. Not stopping there, Kyosuke continued to create two more spheres of different attributes. Everyone around was shocked by his power. One man exclaimed, did he just create all the basic attributes at once? Kyosuke smiled smugly, how's that, huh? A person with the void attribute, always considered worthless, can do this and surprise you, right? From afar Karen ran over and praised, you're amazing, Kyosuke. Kyosuke encouraged her back, thanks, do your best too, Asahi. It was Karen's turn. She prepared to take her test. Karen concentrated her mana to showcase her ability. The withered plants on the shelf began to revive under her magic. The stems straightened and started to blossom. Finally, from the wilted sprouts Karen transformed them into large, healthy flowering plants. Two male classmates sneered at her ability. She only revives wilted flowers, nothing special. Only Kyosuke noticed the special aspect of Karen's magic. It was light attribute magic, a rare attribute. But the judges might find it hard to evaluate. I pity her, and I hope she doesn't get entangled in this. Taunted, Karen bowed her head in embarrassment and walked away. The long-haired male judge had noticed her and left a note on his phone, Asahi Karen, worth considering as a test subject. The judge announced the next round. Finally, we will hold one-on-one duels. The long-haired judge pointed to the people behind him. Your opponents are them. The students were stunned. You want us to face members of the Great Serpent Changsan? The judge reassured them, don't worry, we won't judge solely on wins or losses, how you fight matters. Outwardly he said that, but inwardly the judge looked down on them. No academy student stood a chance against a Great Serpent member. A cocky blonde challenged Kayasuk. So you're the student who caused a commotion in the tests. He flexed and threatened, it seems you showed off and did well in the other tests, but I'll show you none of that matters in real combat. Under the pressure from the muscular man, Kayasuk merely offered a polite smile. Yes, I hope I can learn much from you. The blonde declared confidently, I'll defeat you in one strike. He used his earth attribute skill to form multiple earth spheres. Then dozens of identical spheres shot straight at Kayasuk. Unfazed, Kayasuk calmly used his magic to block the attack. The earth spheres were then reflected back toward the opponent by his magic. The blonde was hit by his own magic. He gritted his teeth. What? He destroyed my spell in one move. Gathering himself and looking forward, Kayasuk was gone. The blonde stared in confusion. Where did he go? Suddenly Kayasuk appeared behind him with an ice knife at his throat. He smiled smugly and whispered in the blonde's ear, you call casting a spell to create an opening, real combat? I've learned a lot. The match result was announced. The winner, Ase Kayasuk. The long-haired judge in the crowd was stunned. He defeated a member of the Great Serpent. Who exactly is this student? Night fell. Roshin sat in her room listening to the judge's report. Lei, the trials have concluded. She asked about candidates. Did you find anyone interesting? The judge on the line replied, actually, there's one student quite noteworthy. Roshin showed interest. A noteworthy student? The judge continued, yes, he passed the trials with overwhelming strength. However, it seems he has the void attribute. Roshin pondered, void attribute, could this be the student Iwako has been investigating? Thinking that, she sat up and laughed out loud, haha. Roshin's eyes brimmed with excitement. It seems I'm about to have an interesting lab rat. In the auditorium the long-haired judge announced, I will now name those who passed the trials. First, his stern face stared ahead. A firm voice rang through the room, Ase Kayasuk. The surrounding students began whispering, of course he passed, his test was insane. Kayasuk smiled with satisfaction, everything was going according to plan, now I can approach Lei. The judge continued reading the list, next, Asahi Karen. She replied happily, yes sir. Kayasuk looked over, a little surprised, Asahi was chosen too. He began to ponder, I didn't think having a rare attribute alone would be enough to pass. It seems Lei is using academy students to scheme something. There must be some reason behind Asahi being chosen. Karen was so happy with her result that she beamed with joy. Kayasuk also smiled at her, though he let out a helpless sigh. He looked at Karen and told himself, it's fine, I won't let them touch Asahi. I just need to reach my goal and protect her. On another day at the Great Serpent Changsan, a few days after the trials, they stood before the building, H. Lei Company, Japan branch. In the office the long-haired judge was greeting the students, welcome, those who passed the trials. He began explaining the schedule, today we will conduct suitability tests before officially admitting you into the Great Serpent Changsan, additionally, Lei Roshi will also be present. At those words the judge's expression changed into something extremely frightening. She will meet you after the tests conclude. Please follow me. Kayasuk and Karen followed the group. While Karen curiously looked around, Kayasuk thought, I want to meet Lei immediately, but I can't leave Asahi behind. Karen was excited, entering such a large building is really thrilling, right? Kayasuk replied, yeah. Karen turned to him with a happy smile, I'm really glad to possibly join the Great Serpent Changsan. Kayasuk asked, by the way, why do you want to join the Great Serpent Changsan? Karen scratched her head shyly, my mother is in the hospital and the treatment is expensive. Kayasuk nodded, I see. So you've decided, you're joining because of your mother, not because of me. Now I have to try even harder to protect her. The long-haired judge stopped before a basement, we're here. Kayasuk asked, a basement? They all went down into the basement and stopped at the hall. Kayasuk scanned the room, testing equipment, so it's probably them. The long-haired judge ordered, close the door. The door slammed shut, leaving everyone bewildered. Kayasuk observed, they don't intend to let anyone leave, these people work seriously. Seeing this, two young men stepped forward to question him, hey, what do you think you're doing? The long-haired judge finally revealed his terrifying face and barked, order. The two young men were so frightened by his words they trembled. The long-haired man explained, as I said before, we will now begin the suitability test. Specifically, we will test compatibility with a new drug currently being developed in secret. This drug is formulated from ingredients gathered in dungeons and can greatly enhance a user's physical strength and mana. The red-haired youth stammered, what? The blue-haired one smiled, well, that's good news then. Kayasuk asked, does this new drug have any side effects? The long-haired man pointed to the screen, it's faster if I show you. A male student, tied up for an injection, begged, please stop, The other students who witnessed it were astonished and terrified. The boy quickly fell unconscious, drooling involuntarily from his mouth. The blue-haired youth shouted, what the hell is this? The judge replied calmly, what you just saw is someone incompatible with the new drug, does that answer your question? The two youths vehemently protested, don't be ridiculous, we'd never accept that drug. Having said that, they cast spells and prepared to attack the judge. The two charged at the long-haired judge, threatening, let us out of here now. Meanwhile Kayasuk calmly warned Karen, Asahi, don't leave my side. The long-haired man clenched his fists tightly. He calmly knocked out the two troublemakers in the lab. The two went unconscious immediately after the judge's blow. After the strike, the long-haired man looked at the two and muttered, damn, the number of samples has decreased. His gaze began to shift, turning his attention to others. The long-haired man pointed at Karen and ordered, we'll start with that girl over there first. He loaded the drug into a syringe. That girl must be a light attribute student, I'm very eager to see the experiment's results. Then he stepped closer to Karen, making her terrified. Immediately Kayasuk moved to stand in front of Karen. His expression hardened as he protected her from the approaching villain. The long-haired man asked, what are you doing? Kayasuk answered, stopping a coward like you from getting near her. Kayasuk's words made the long-haired man clench his teeth in anger. He ordered his big henchman in front, hey, hold him down. The man threw a punch at Kayasuk, but Kayasuk evaded it with his speed. Kayasuk's speed surprised him and he couldn't keep up. With a single move Kayasuk quickly took down the large henchman. Those nearby who witnessed it were also surprised. What? The first man was handled, and Kayasuk moved like shifting sand. The next two were also swiftly defeated by him. The big henchman cried out in pain and collapsed to their knees after Kayasuk's blows. The long-haired man couldn't believe his eyes. Impossible. He took down so many people in a single strike. Having dealt with the obstructing thugs, Kayasuk turned around. He gave the long-haired man a cold stare and warned, you're next. The man stiffened under Kayasuk's intimidation. Faced with the disadvantage, the long-haired man decided, it's come to this. If I catch that girl, his sudden lunge made Karen scream in fear, no. Kayasuk grabbed the hand the long-haired man used to reach for Karen, I told you, I won't let you near her. He angrily withdrew his hand, damn. Who is he, after all? An ordinary student couldn't do that. Kayasuk's gaze turned frightening, now, steel yourself. At that moment Kayasuk stood like a hero blocking Karen's path. The long-haired man ground his teeth in anger, damn it. Kayasuk instructed, Asahi, stay behind me. Though scared, Karen trembled and replied, thank you, Kayasuk. Watching him protect her, Karen thought to herself, Kayasuk is amazing. A moment ago I couldn't even keep up with his movements. I knew he'd gotten stronger, but I didn't expect it to be this much. The long-haired man regained his composure and warned, you bastard, don't act high and mighty. He wasn't intimidated and spoke up, let me ask you something. Why are the Academy's students being used as test subjects? What is the reason? His sharp gaze fixed on his opponent. Hearing Kayasuk's question, the long-haired man smiled slyly. He arrogantly answered, it's simple. Those who follow Lord Lei can receive his blessing. Once we succeed in developing this drug, he'll become even stronger than before. Kayasuk frowned, you think committing such inhumane experiments is acceptable just for that goal? The long-haired man confidently uttered in human words, we just make use of what's available, that's all. Then, suddenly, he broke into a strange smile. Being our test subjects is an honor for them. Kayasuk recalled Karen's words in the company hall earlier. My mother is in the hospital and the medical bills are expensive. Joining the great serpent Changsan would really make me happy. Remembering those words made him clench his fists tighter. The long-haired man casually pointed at Karen, that girl too, she was overjoyed to become one. Kayasuk's voice brimmed with extreme hatred, shut up. A great power now surged throughout his body. Magic radiating from him made the long-haired man uneasy. Kayasuk hissed each word in anger, who do you think you are? A piece of trash who tramples others like you can't understand how Asahi feels. Karen looked at the boy before her, moved, Kaisu. The long-haired man doubted, what is this overwhelming pressure? Is he really just a student? Although unsettled, a smile still tugged at the corner of his mouth. With confidence he spoke to Kayasuk, normally I'd tell you to know your place, but I don't dislike your audacity. So, why don't you submit to Lord Lei? If you hand that girl over, you might even be promoted to a high-ranking officer. I'm sure Lord Lei would be pleased. His words made Kayasuk angrier. I told you to shut up, I won't forgive people like you. The long-haired man loosened his tie, you'll regret this. Then he began to display his power. The long-haired man's eyes flared a powerful golden glow. His power caused the ground beneath him to shatter. Kayasuk realized, it's a body enhancement magic. The long-haired man asserted, yes, combined with my martial arts, this is an invincible technique. Then he started taunting, if you've got guts, come at me. The long-haired man's feet left the ground as he surged forward. He swung a fist at him, take this. The punch came down hard but missed Kayasuk entirely, leaving the long-haired man stunned. This power. The man continued with a face full of confidence. Seems you dodged that one, huh? Kayasuk observed, I see, so that's what body enhancement magic is like. It's really strong. If that's the case, the long-haired man lunged at Kayasuk again, I dare you to dodge this one. Kayasuk closed his eyes to cast a spell, focusing and turning imagination into form. Seeing him stand still, the long-haired man mocked, what the hell are you doing, giving up? His fist drew near, die. Kayasuk snapped his eyes open, void magic. He stopped the long-haired man's punch, activating it. The man couldn't believe what he was seeing, no way. Does he have power equal to mine? No, he's even stronger. Kayasuk smiled challengingly at the long-haired man, looks like I can use body enhancement magic too, thanks. It's because of you that I could imagine it. Seizing the moment, Kayasuk delivered a powerful blow to the long-haired man. He was grievously wounded by Kayasuk's strike. The opponent's whole body was sent flying, rocks and earth shattering. Thrown to the ground, he refused to accept this defeat. No way. A fleeting thought crossed minds, who exactly is he? Kayasuk stood silently, staring at the long-haired man with hatred and contempt. Afterwards Karen was deeply grateful, thank you, Kayasuk. Our hero gently asked her, Asahi, are you okay? Glancing at the others behind him, Kayasuk offered, I'll clear the way, so you should leave. The two youths hesitated, but what about you? Kayasuk didn't answer. He used his strength to smash a large glass window frame. To the astonishment of the three friends behind him, Kayasuk strode out proudly. He left with only one line, I have business to attend to. On Roshi's end the phone rang urgently, Lord Lei, there's an emergency. It seems Lord Yang has been defeated and the students have escaped, Roshi exclaimed. What? The caller continued, there's an extremely powerful one heading straight this way. As the line cut off, a loud noise suddenly rang out. Roshi was momentarily stunned. What the hell happened? It was Kayasuk standing at the door. Roshi asked cautiously, who are you and why have you come here? Kayasuk's expression changed to something terrifying. His calm but threatening voice rose, simple. I have come to repay you a debt from 20 years ago. Roshi couldn't fully grasp what Kayasuk meant. A debt from 20 years ago. What are you talking about? Kayasuk stepped closer calmly. It seems you still don't understand. Do I need to explain it to you in detail? Since the SSS tier dungeon 20 years ago, you pentagonal saints have been hailed as heroes. Hearing the mention of the past, Roshi's expression grew tenser. Kayasuk continued, suppose the conspiracy of someone was crushed that day. Roshi turned away calmly. What nonsense is a student like you babbling? Do you intend to lecture me on history? Ignoring her, Kayasuk went on. Now the pentagonal saints are leaders in every major field worldwide. They're praised as heroes who defeated evil. Roshi interjected, so what are you? Kayasuk cut her off. Nevertheless, the truth is completely different. Roshi frowned, her voice laced with annoyance. What are you saying? Kayasuk explained further, his aura suddenly changed. You used your own teammates as sacrifices to reap results and build your reputation. Even now, you still trample on the wills of those who stood by your side. Am I wrong? Hearing Kayasuk's accusation, Roshi burst into laughter. She sneered at Kayasuk's words. I was wondering what nonsense you're spouting. Don't tell me you believe those ridiculous conspiracy theories. Undeterred by Roshi's attitude, Kayasuk insisted. It's not just a conspiracy theory. I know what you did. You pushed your teammates into that gate. Kayasuk's indictment turned Roshi's face pale with guilt. She frowned suspiciously. How would an ordinary student know that? Sensing Roshi's internal conflict, Kayasuk spoke. You still don't understand, Rei. Who do you think I really am? Changing his expression, Kayasuk emphasized, I am Misato Kyoichiro. At that name, Roshi became panic-stricken. No. Impossible, Kayasuk interrupted forcefully. That already happened. I used the very power you once called monstrous. A level 100 able to wield time magic is truly a monster. Every word from Kayasuk deepened Roshi's fear. She was shaken by the truth, unable to believe it. No way, Kyoichiro, are you really here? Kayasuk affirmed, I also know exactly what Rei's company has been secretly doing. If I expose that, your reputation will collapse. Roshi angrily waved her hand and snapped, don't toy with me. Kayasuk continued advancing slowly, don't toy with you, those words should come from me. Because of what happened 20 years ago, and for trampling on the hopes of a girl who gave everything, I will never forgive you for that. At the threat, Roshi suddenly smiled. She arrogantly lifted her chin, don't underestimate me, you are no longer in Misato's body. Roshi gripped a staff tightly, so you dared to show up before me. I will make you regret it. She launched her magic at Kayasuk. The force shook the room so much that cracks spread everywhere. With his speed, Kayasuk dodged one of Roshi's attacks. Roshi held the staff proudly and introduced, what do you think? This is the power of the weapon developed by Rei Corporation. It's forged from materials from the dungeon, something harder than any metal. Let me show you how sharp it is. Saying that, she leapt into the air and struck at Kayasuk. Facing Roshi's continuous attacks, Kayasuk dodged them all. A powerful blow aimed straight at his face but failed to hit. Seeing that, Roshi sneered, it seems dodging is the only thing you can do. Suddenly she realized something was wrong. Why are the strikes not landing? Kayasuk said tersely, I see. While dodging Roshi's attack he observed, you've been too busy playing corporate queen. Your moves have become sloppy. You're no better than Iwako now. Kayasuk appeared behind her, freezing her in place. She screamed at Kayasuk, enough of your nonsense. At that moment Roshi's weapon passed through his body. She was pleased, I've hit him. Before she could savor it, Kayasuk's voice rang out, too bad. Kayasuk had appeared behind her, leaving her stunned. Instantly she froze in place, why, you. Then Roshi clenched her teeth and realized, is that void magic? I've never heard it can work like this. If that's the case, the weapon was readied once more to strike again. She began imbuing her weapon with fire attribute magic. Her eyes flared with anger, I'll finish him with the next strike. I'll shut that mouth of yours. Brace yourself. The power seemed intent on burning everything as it surged forward. Roshi began charging wildly with a great blaze. The spear, infused with fire magic, drove straight into Kayasuk. But with little effort Kayasuk held the spearhead back with 2 fingers. Roshi exclaimed in shock, impossible. It appears that was all your power. Kayasuk glared and mocked, you're even worse than 20 years ago. Seeing the situation grim, Roshi decided, if so, then I have no choice but to use that. She took a stance to cast another spell. Kayasuk hadn't recovered when, you intend to. A flicker of astonishment crossed his eyes. Roshi then took a red syringe in her hand. She then aimed the needle straight at herself. Immediately a stream of purple magic appeared and enveloped the woman's body. Kayasuk's face instantly showed tension. He furrowed his brow. Roshi's whole body began to transform. Are you going that far? Her gaze carried murderous intent as she spat the chilling words, you monster. Not long after, the purple aura slowly dissipated, revealing Roshi's body now fully transformed into a half-monster state. After finishing her transformation, she let out a contemptuous laugh. Haha, now you can't defeat me. In response to her words, the male lead calmly retorted, on the contrary, you plan to beat me using a performance-enhancing drug? Do you think it's that simple? Answering that question, Roshi maintained her earlier contempt and said, don't underestimate me. Do you know how much time and money I poured into this drug? I gathered materials that can only be found deep within dungeons and spent years researching this drug. Since I witnessed that extraordinary power 20 years ago, I've been trying to reach that threshold of strength. And now I've found a power that surpasses them all. I should be thanking you, Kyoichiro. Back from Kayasuk's perspective, by this point he could no longer stand idly by and listen to this cruel woman. He cut in, huh? Pathetic. Surpass them all, really? You boast about relying on a drug? Kayasuk said, his face icy and questioning. This left Roshi momentarily stunned. She asked back, what did you just say? Before she could finish speaking, our protagonist assumed an attacking stance. Sorry to cut your monologue short, but it's time I ended this. With that, Kayasuke's hands were engulfed in blazing golden flames. Opposite him, Roshi also seemed eager to send Kayasuke to meet the ruler of the underworld. She took a fighting stance. Enough, finish this. Let's see who's truly stronger. No sooner had she finished speaking than her body lunged forward, swift as the wind, closing in right in front of Kayasuke. However, facing this attack, the protagonist merely tilted his body slightly to the side and easily dodged. Unfortunately for the wall behind him, it took a direct hit from Roshi and was shattered into countless chunks of rock and debris scattering everywhere. As for Roshi, after launching her attack she turned to Kayasuke with a mocking remark, "See that? This is the result of my research. I will send you to the afterlife once more," she said as she lunged again with terrifying speed, causing Kayasuke to inwardly startle. Before he could defend himself, Roshi's giant hand struck him directly in the chest. The powerful force sent the protagonist's body flying backward like a cannonball. Seeing she had landed a hit, Roshi smugly thought to herself, "I've won." Unfortunately, her triumph was short-lived as she suddenly felt a sharp pain shoot up from her foot, forcing Roshi to hurriedly glance downward. She discovered that, at some point, a shard of sharp ice had pierced through her left foot. The pain shot straight to her brain, causing her small frame to collapse to the ground. Meanwhile, Kayasuke remained calm, hands in his pockets as he walked up to her and said, "I planted that the moment you launched your attack." Kayasuke's meticulous preparation threw Roshi into a panic. Sweat poured from her as she said, "How could you?" Hearing this, Kayasuke leisurely explained without holding back, "Thanks to your lackeys using it earlier. I saw how you use body enhancement magic. Your drug is indeed impressive, but in the end it only grants you a bit of berserk power." With a tone full of contempt, Kayasuke caused Roshi to clench her lips and retort, "How dare you mock thee of my research?" Not letting her finish, Kayasuke shouted, "Don't make excuses. You trample on others and now you dare call that progress? You truly disgust me." The more he spoke, the angrier Kayasuke's face grew, his eyes filling with murderous intent. This set off alarm bells inside Roshi without stop. With no other choice, she hurriedly concentrated power into her palm and, despite the injury to her left foot, lunged to attack Kayasuke. She kept shouting, "Shut up." Unfortunately for her, faced with such a simple attack, Kayasuke merely extended his hand forward and gripped her wrist, while his other arm delivered a shattering punch straight into the belly of this wicked woman, causing her so much pain that she vomited blood. At that moment, nothing remained in Roshi's heart but shock and unwillingness. My power has no effect. So this is Kyoichiro's current strength. Before she could do anything more, she was flattened like a dead dog. Meanwhile, Kayasuke, having defeated his old enemy, coldly left the scene. As he walked he said, "Lei, this was never true power to begin with." Then, just after leaving the building, a familiar voice suddenly sounded from behind the male lead. Hearing it, Kayasuke turned and recognized the speaker as his friend Asahi. "Ah, Asahi? Are you okay?" Kayasuke replied with a smile, "Glad you're alright." At the same time, not far away, a group of reporters began buzzing about the building explosion. "Hey, just like the tip said. Lei's company has been attacked." Their words made Asahi suspicious and she turned to the boy beside her to ask, "Was that you?" Of course, Kayasuke feigned ignorance. "Who knows?" He shrugged, then sank into thought. Now the truth about Lei's crimes is exposed, the test subjects are safe, and Lei has lost everything. Turning to Asahi's viewpoint, as if noticing Kayasuke's troubled expression, she anxiously said, "Hey, Kayasuke, I still don't understand what's going on. But if you hadn't been there, I probably wouldn't be standing here now. So, I'm really grateful to you." Asahi's words surprised Kayasuke a little, but he quickly forced a faint smile and reminded himself, "That's right, I almost forgot, helping others used to be my reason for living." Time passed quickly, and by that evening news of the attack on Lei's company had spread everywhere. A female anchor's voice came from the TV. "We have received reports that illegal human experiments were conducted in a secret underground laboratory owned by Lei Roshi, one of the 5-star saints. The incident was discovered after the site was attacked by an unknown assailant. She is currently showing signs of amnesia, and the identity of the perpetrator remains unknown." Back with Kayasuke, hearing the anchor, he was slightly curious, "I wonder how the others will react." Then suddenly the anchor's tone grew urgent. We we interrupt to update breaking news. Nathaniel of the 5-Star Saints has just issued an official statement. Those words caused Kayasuk's expression to change abruptly, his face filling with murderous intent as he stared back. On the TV, the blonde man began to speak. On behalf of the 5-Star Saints, I stand here to deliver an urgent message. I can only say that we are deeply saddened by the matter involving Lei. Roshi was our comrade. We feel profound remorse for not recognizing her fall sooner. He spoke with great sorrow, but how could this act fool Kayasuk's eyes? In fact, it only made the male lead feel more irritated. You didn't notice? So the 5-Star Saints intend to pretend they knew nothing, just like they did 20 years ago. They haven't changed at all, lying without batting an eye, willing to do anything to protect their exalted heroic status. People like me and Asahi aren't even considered worthy of their expectations, we're just stepping stones. Nathaniel Covell, judging by how he acted back then, very likely was the one who led the effort to push me into exile. And no wonder, he's always been calculating, careful with every step. Right now, no one knows his whereabouts. Kayasuk calmed down slightly and pulled out his phone, as if intending to contact someone. In another development, inside an unfamiliar church, a girl knelt before an altar, as if praying. Behind her, another stranger stepped forward and said, "That is what he said, Lady Claudia." Up front, Claudia didn't bother to turn and coldly replied, "Is that so? I understand, go." Having said that, she folded her hands and continued her prayer, "My lord, please guide us toward a future filled with light." Cut to the training room, where a man named Ingolf received a reminder from his subordinate, "Lord Ingolf, the council meeting is about to start." Hearing this, Ingolf tossed a weight to the floor and growled, "I understand, I'll be there immediately." That dog Lei, what the hell was she thinking? Ingolf's voice was full of anger. Before long, a closed meeting of the 5-Star Saints convened, and of course the chairman was Nathaniel. Seeing everyone present, he spoke up, "All right, everyone, let's begin the 5-Star Saints Council meeting." On the TV screen, Claudia maintained her praying posture and declared, "So the attacker exposed Lei's illegal experiments? How despicable." Nearby, the bulky Ingolf agreed in a gruff voice, "What the hell was that Lei bitch doing? She's stained the honor of the 5-Star Saints." Hearing these words from both, the blonde Saint Nathaniel slowly sat down and voiced his opinion, "Is that right?" However, these experiments were carried out by Lei alone and initiated by her. The rest of us 5-Star Saints were completely unaware of this. For someone like Nathaniel, how could he not have known? Yet he chose to place all the blame squarely on Lei. As for the traitor Hideki, he immediately grasped Nathaniel's intent and inwardly admired, "That's Nathaniel, he's always rational." In other words, they're dumping all the guilt on Lei and abandoning her. I don't know about Claudia and Ingolf, but Nathaniel certainly knew about Lei's experiments. Yet he abandoned her so easily. The more Hideki thought about it, the more he broke out in a cold sweat at Nathaniel's decisiveness and coldness. After about 2 seconds he calmed a bit, then glanced worriedly at a letter beside him and reminded himself, "No, what's important now is to follow his instructions." On the other side, the ugly Claudia suddenly spoke up, "I'm quite curious about the attacker." To explain, Hideki answered, "As for that, there is a sealed letter sent to the academy from the person who attacked Lei," he said as he held the letter up for everyone to see. This made the others gasp, "A letter from the attacker?" Iwako read it aloud, the group urged. Then Hideki looked at the letter in his hand, "Of course, I will read it now." The letter read, "I have returned to the present world from within that gate. I will deal with all of you, so wait for me, Misato Kyoichiro." The moment they heard the name on the letter, the 3 others' expressions spun, especially Nathaniel's. Her face was sweaty with worry, her voice trembled with a hint of hope. Could someone be impersonating Kyoichiro? In response, the blonde man fell a little silent, then shook his head. No, he couldn't know about what's inside that gate unless he'd been there himself. The sender is definitely Kyoichiro. Hearing this, the nun stroked her chin and thought a moment, maybe he used time magic. Before she could finish, the bulky Ingolf snapped, "Why should we worry? If Kyoichiro really has returned, we just need to bring him down once more," the large man said with murderous intent. And of course, Nathaniel fully agreed, Ingolf makes sense. Think about it, we don't need to act hastily. Claudia still seemed a bit uneasy, about to say something, but Nathaniel cut her off. Why don't we observe what Kyoichiro will do? Thus, the brief meeting ended in haste. After turning off the monitor, the bulky Ingolf walked toward the window, looked out, and said angrily, "Kyoichiro, you are the one I will never forgive." In another development, after the meeting ended, Principal Hideki Iwako hurriedly reported the situation to the protagonist. His voice came through the phone, "So, following your instructions, I carried out your orders." Hearing this, Kyosuke calmly said, "Understood." Having said that, he leaned back contentedly, continually calculating what to do next, so Nathaniel didn't act immediately. He's very cautious. Well, that's fine. Once they realize I've returned, they won't be able to sit still any longer. First, I'll deal with those whose whereabouts I already know. With that thought, he cheerfully ordered his hound, "All right, Iwako, act." On the other end, Iwako's anxious voice sounded, "What shall we do next?" Seeing his tracker so nervous, as if about to soil himself, Kyosuke quickly reassured him, "It's not that difficult. Just arrange to transfer me to an academy connected to Ingol." Seeing that, Hideki seemed to guess Kyosuke's intent and asked, "So next, you're targeting Ingolf?" Kyosuke admitted bluntly, "Yes. Using a short-term study abroad program will be easy, right?" Turning to Iwako, since he was on Kyosuke's side, even if unwilling he had to warn, "Let me be clear, Ingolf isn't like me or Lei. You won't find any bad rumors or shady deals about him." That pointed warning from the sharp-faced man made Kyosuke fall silent for a moment, but then he calmly said, "Even so, at the very least I want to see his face. Leave the formalities to you." Having said that, he hung up, cast a cold glance at the view outside, and murmured, "Even if there are no rumors about him, that doesn't change the fact that he betrayed me 20 years ago." Time passed quickly. Thanks to Iwako's arrangements, our protagonist soon received a spot to study abroad. Cut to Kyosuke's location, he scanned the surroundings and whispered, "So this is Germany?" They confirmed a link between this country's academy and Ingolf. "I'll use the German academy to get close to him, but for now I have to get to the academy first." With that thought, the protagonist moved quickly. Before long he was drawn by a noisy shout, "You leech-like bunch." And of course Nathaniel fully agreed, Ingolf makes sense. Think about it, we don't need to act rashly. However, Kyosuke couldn't understand what they were saying because of the language. Come to think of it, they were speaking a completely different language here. Then I'll use Void to auto-translate, Kyosuke thought. Without hesitation, he activated his magic and reached out around him. Soon, voices began flowing into his ears. The man in brown laughed and said, "Don't say that. Come on, miss, what's wrong with coming with us for a bit?" Beside him, the man in the black coat chimed in, "Come with us, it won't waste your time." "Come with me." Responding, the black-haired girl kept an annoyed expression and replied, "You're why I call you leeches. I'm not going with some street scum like you." Her words seemed to anger the two thugs. "What did you say, girl? Too sassy, we'll teach you a lesson." As he spoke, the man in black reached forward, and grabbed the girl's shoulder hard, darkening her expression. But at that moment a voice intervened, "Hey, why don't you scram and leave her alone?" The sudden shout drew the three forward. The brown-haired one turned to question Kyosuke, "Huh? Who the hell are you?" Kyosuke began swearing back, "I said get the hell out of here, you trash." The non-stop insults drove the two thugs into a rage. Without hesitation, both of them concentrated power into their fists, forming blazing golden flames and charging forward, determined to teach Kyosuke a lesson. "You dog, don't you dare look down on us," they shouted, launching their fiery punches at Kyosuke. Unfortunately for them, they had no idea how strong the person in front of them was. With a single flick of his hand, Kyosuke easily sent them flying, leaving them flat as dead dogs. This startled the black-haired girl, just one strike and they were already defeated, So who is this student, Luckily Kyosuke hadn't hit them too hard. Soon the two thugs regained consciousness and fled in haste. "We sincerely apologize." Watching their clumsy retreat, the black-haired girl turned and thanked Kyosuke. "Ah, yeah, thanks for helping me." Hearing that, Kyosuke gave a slight shake of his head, "No problem." Saying that, he scanned the area again. The extras kept gossiping and some even pulled out phones to take pictures. That made Kyosuke uncomfortable, so he said, "Looks like we've attracted a crowd. Let's get out of here." With that, the two of them quickly left the chaotic area. Behind him, the black-haired girl seemed to be thinking to herself, the last time someone helped me like this was when I met that person. Time passed quickly. By now, Kayasuk and the stranger had walked quite a distance. After noticing there were no more people gossiping around them, the stranger spoke up. "Oh, hey, I just want to thank you for what you did. Because of you things didn't get worse." For Kayasuk, handling those thugs was just a casual deed, so he didn't care much. "I told you, don't worry about it." Inwardly he also pondered the girl's attitude. She's probably just a responsible type. That said, I feel like I've seen her somewhere before. Unlike Kayasuk, who had many questions, the black-haired girl turned to him and asked, "By the way, your uniform. Are you a Japanese student?" The question snapped Kayasuk back, and he nodded. "Ah, yes, that's right. I just arrived today as part of a short-term exchange program. I'm on my way to the training academy," he explained calmly, and whether by coincidence or not, the black-haired girl smiled and offered, "If so, let me take you there to say thanks." With someone willing to guide him, our protagonist, not foolish, accepted. He nodded and said, "Thanks a lot." So the two of them continued walking together for a while, chatting as they went. Kayasuk asked, "Are you traveling around the world?" To that question, the stranger shrugged and admitted, "Yeah, well, I have my own circumstances." Her casual, vague answer made Kayasuk curious. Is she about my age? It's rare to see a girl traveling alone like this. Unable to hide his curiosity, Kayasuk asked, "Don't you encounter danger traveling alone? Didn't you just get caught up in a situation like that?" Hearing him, the stranger waved her hand repeatedly and laughed. "Oh, I'm fine. I may look it, but I know a few spells." Her words did not reassure Kayasuk. If anything, they worried him more. He thought inwardly, but didn't she just get grabbed a moment ago? Putting that aside, the short-haired girl stroked her chin and continued, "So, are you studying at the training academy?" Kayasuk replied, "Is there a problem?" The black-haired girl glanced at him. "Well, achievements. Many students there think the same way. They even have a ranking system in class, like a hierarchy. And there's also a reward system based on performance." Hearing that, Kayasuk simply nodded, "I understand." In his mind he quickly grasped what she meant. It seems they take merit-based systems even more seriously than in Japan. According to Iwako, Ingolf often holds regular training sessions for upper-tier students. Meaning, if I want to approach Ingolf, I have to make my mark in that merit-based environment. This is perfect, exactly the kind of challenge I like. Thinking that, Kayasuk couldn't hide the excitement on his face. Returning to the stranger, she soon pointed ahead and reminded him, "Look, we're here. This is the Lancing Training Academy." Having arrived, Kayasuk waved goodbye to the stranger. "That's enough, thanks." From behind, the black-haired girl waved back, "No problem." "Oh, I haven't introduced myself. My name is Shirato Sayuki." As she spoke, she held out her hand. Seeing that, Kayasuk reached out as well and introduced himself. "I remember. I'm Ase Kayasuk." The moment he heard his name, Shirato's expression changed. She looked moved, as if she couldn't believe it. This caught Kayasuk's attention and he asked, "What's wrong?" Quickly, Shirato composed herself and shook her head. "Ah, it's nothing. Your name just reminds me of someone I know." "Well then, goodbye. Good luck at the academy." With that, the black-haired girl turned and left. As Kayasuk watched her walk away, he felt a twinge of thought. Shirato, something about her lingers in my mind. But oh well, never mind, let's go. Saying that, he quickened his pace and entered the school grounds. However, not long after, trouble found him when he heard an arrogant voice. "Hey, you there. Is that you?" The voice belonged to a cocky redhead. Responding to that attitude, Kayasuk stayed calm and said, "And who are you, you thug?" His words infuriated the redhead. He shouted, "Who are you calling a thug? It's not like we get Japanese exchange students here every day. I thought you were nothing special. But so you don't misunderstand this place, I'll give you a little welcoming ceremony." He said this while pressing his face close to Kayasuk's to intimidate him. To Kayasuk, a single glance was enough to tell what the redhead meant. It only made him sigh inwardly. "Ugh, barely arrived and I've already met a creep." As she said, maybe he wants to test me with a fight. With that thought, Kayasuk casually tossed his bag aside and said, "Fine, I'll fight you." Seeing that, the redhead agreed immediately, even a bit delighted. "Good that you're reasonable. Then let's fight." With that, he began to use his power. He manipulated chunks of rubble to hover around and shot them forward like bullets. However, this still wasn't enough to trouble our protagonist. With a single, effortless wave of his hand, Kyosuke easily dispersed the entire attack, leaving the redhead's face stunned. Not giving him even a few seconds of surprise, Kyosuke's cold voice rang out, "You have numbers, but your strength is too weak. If you're going to use earth magic, at least do it like this." Accompanying his words, a giant sphere of earth appeared in his hand. Then, without hesitation, Kyosuke hurled it forward with great force. The redhead barely escaped, but the boulder smashed into the wall behind him, creating a large hole. Just looking at the damage it caused was enough to make the thug tremble all over. Finally, at this point, he realized that the person before him was truly a monster. He wondered inwardly, who the hell is this monster? In another development, the scene shifts to Iwako. She was walking while contacting someone on the phone. "Yes, that's right," she said coldly, holding a stack of documents filled with all kinds of information about the protagonist. "I met Ase Kyosuke this past Saturday. I will remain in Germany and continue to observe the target." Back with the protagonist, he had just received his student ID from a staff member and quickly left the administration office. As he walked, Kyosuke looked at the card in his hand and thought, all the paperwork is done. Finally, I can enter the local dungeon. Before, this student ID was automatically translated for me, so it's a bit different from when I was in Japan. From Kyosuke's view, his student card displayed basic info, Lancing Training Academy, Ase Kyosuke, Attribute Void, Level 41, 0 points. Seeing 0 points, he quickly guessed, this must be the point system Shirato mentioned. It seems to track dungeon exploration and performance. Thinking that, Kyosuke shoved the card into his jacket pocket and reassured himself, whatever. I don't have classes today, I should go see what the German dungeons are like. With that, Kyosuke hurried off, unaware that, behind him, the redhead he'd beaten earlier was silently watching Kyosuke from the rear, his face thoughtful as if pondering something. Time passed quickly, and the scene shifted to the gate of an unidentified dungeon. Before entering, Kyosuke reminded himself once more, if I want to get close to Ingolf, I need to reach special class rank first. Maybe I'll start accumulating points in this high-level dungeon. With that, without hesitation, our protagonist stepped inside. Soon the interior of the dungeon appeared before Kyosuke, a wide corridor. From afar, a few skeletal soldiers began to loom and approach, which piqued the black-haired youth's interest. Let's see what kind of monsters will come out. Undead now? Are there some strong ones? I haven't encountered these kinds of monsters in Japan, but I learned their weaknesses back when I was Misato Kyoichiro. Acting on that, Kyosuke used his magic, coating his palm with a bright yellow flame. Meanwhile, across from him the skeletal soldiers, smelling a living person, charged like rabid dogs. One gripped its axe tightly and swung hard forward. Luckily Kyosuke was quick enough to dodge to the side, otherwise, he would likely have been split in two by that force. Kyosuke prepared to counterattack. He thought to himself, undead collapse under powerful strikes and fire. With that in mind, he unleashed a flaming punch, striking the skeletal soldier's stomach with full force, causing its spine to snap in two and its upper body to be blasted far backward. Seeing their comrade taken down in a single blow, the two remaining undead stood dumbfounded, too stunned to act. Seeing that, Kyosuke deliberately reached out and taunted, "Come on, bring it on, rush me." Time passed quickly. Now the floor around was littered with shattered bones of the undead, while Kyosuke strolled forward nonchalantly with his hands in his pockets, muttering, "This must be the final room. The boss is probably waiting here." With that in mind, Kyosuke hurried forward, and soon he encountered the dungeon's boss. At a glance, it looked like a lich. The powerful aura it radiated made even Kyosuke quietly admit to himself, this is the boss. The presence is really heavy. First, let's try fire and see how it goes. I'll strike it first with fire magic. With that thought, Kyosuke quickly hurled a fireball forward. However, the lich reacted extremely fast. It swung its staff to one side, and released a purple energy that shot out and met the fireball head-on, causing both attacks to dissipate in midair. Seeing that, Kyosuke wasn't too surprised. It neutralized the fireball. Well, it's a boss after all. Turning back to face it, the lich began to take the initiative. It concentrated mana into its staff and unleashed a stream of purple liquid that looked extremely dangerous. Although he didn't know exactly what that attack was, Kayasuk nimbly jumped back to avoid it. Sure enough, the next sight made his face go stiff, because the floor beneath had been corroded into a large hole. Kayasuk's scalp tingled. That orb melts everything it touches. It's an advanced magic. However, I can also use it to create an advantage for myself. Thinking that, a grin quickly appeared on his face. Whether the lich felt provoked or not, a second later it fired 3 more magic spheres in succession toward him. But our protagonist had already formed a plan in his head. He thought, I'll focus wind magic into my souls to boost my thrust. Thanks to that magic, Kayasuk's speed noticeably increased. His body became a streak of green light, easily evading all the attacks, until he closed in right in front of the lich, leaving it dazed. Not stopping there, Kayasuk taunted, let's see if you can withstand an attack of your own making. At that moment, in Kayasuk's palm was an energy sphere of the lich itself. Before the lich could react, Kayasuk slapped the sphere into its face, causing its features to corrode visibly. A pain sound echoed all around, accompanied by green smoke. In the end, its body helplessly began to disintegrate. Turning back to Kayasuk, he had to admit the effectiveness of that magic. It worked, but since it's an advanced spell, I can't reproduce it perfectly. I need to upgrade void magic first. More importantly, there's still someone else here. Thinking that, Kayasuk gently called out, I know you're there, come out. Sure enough, not far from Kayasuk, the redhead silhouette stood there as if he'd been there all along. Realizing he'd been spotted, he could only give a cold chuckle, then slowly step out and say, Haha, didn't expect you to be that quick. I watched you fight, hope you don't mind. In response, the protagonist's face was icy, so. You here to challenge me again? After speaking, Kayasuk quietly assessed the redhead, seems he still hasn't learned his lesson. But that aura, he's definitely hiding something. Across from him, the redhead slowly approached and said cryptically, well, maybe it's time to clear things up. As he spoke, he pulled something out of his trouser pocket, a movement that immediately put Kayasuk on alert. He hurried into a fighting stance, his mind racing to anticipate the opponent's intent. Damn, he really has something planned. It can't be an enhancer like Bruzen. Could it be a hidden weapon? Completely contrary to what Kayasuk expected, the redhead suddenly dropped to his knees, bowed his head, and begged, please, accept me as your disciple. His sudden action left Kayasuk dumbfounded. His mind was in chaos. What is he trying to do? And what's with that cup? Kayasuk wondered silently. Quickly, as if reading Kayasuk's confusion, the redhead proactively held out the cup and explained, this is the Japanese Dajiza, right? I heard you're even supposed to offer sake to show respect. I couldn't help myself, I'm drawn to your power. Please teach me magic. Seeing his pleading posture, Kayasuk shuddered and took 2 steps back. Are you kidding me? He muttered. But the redhead wasn't finished and continued, that fight was awesome. I feel so stupid for picking a fight with you. From Kayasuk's perspective, he could only sigh at the situation. Great, now things have just gotten more complicated. Thinking that, Kayasuk suddenly realized something and hurriedly turned to pat the red-headed youth on the shoulder. The redhead even thought Kayasuk was about to accept him as a disciple. But a second later, not far from them, a huge explosion occurred, sending rocks flying everywhere. The blast was caused by the massive hand of a bone dragon slamming into the ground. It turned out the lich earlier was not the true boss. Seeing its form, the redhead's face went pale while Kayasuk's brows furrowed. So the lich from before wasn't the final boss. Looks like the real boss is only just appearing now.